Hello everyone. I wasn't paying attention to the end of the episode, but or the end of the intro. But here we are. We're just waiting on audio. That was funny. I was like, "Why did the music end?" Because we got to the end of the intro. Okay, and let's get our background music going. Some nice and light Studio Ghibli music, just because it's nice and cute. Just waiting on audio. I could have swore we started like right around the same time, but I think she normally lets hers run like twice. But hello everyone, how's it going? We are back with... Oh,
and now I'm here.
Hello. I'm here. I was like, I wasn't paying attention to the to the intro, and so I was sitting there like on my phone, and all of a sudden the music stopped. I was like, why'd the music stop? And I was like, oh crap, the intro's done. I was like, oops.
Yeah, I saw the countdown on mine, and I was like trying to pay attention to it, but I was trying to get a message pinned on mine, just describing it, and it's like broken right now, so it's just like it didn't work. It's just unpinnable. That's just the only way to say it.
Well, oops. Best laid plans. Okay, so we are back with Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, and we have read chapters 4 through 7 for today's episode. We had to double check before we started.
Yeah.
Just
I really
to
thought
make sure.
I maybe missed a chapter, so I'm glad I didn't.
No, we're good. Okay, so, beginning with chapter 4, I still love the title names. Like,
the titles are so funny.
I really wish that more books had chapter names still, but,
honestly, I partially agree with that, but then I have another book, right, because I'm reading through still the Terry Goodkind books, and there's so many chapters in that. It's like when you get to chapter like 58,
you're all just like,
You're like, maybe stop naming the chapters.
Okay, fine. Shorter books, especially
shorter books, yes.
For younger readers, like shorter books, I think they deserve title names.
I fully agree with that. I can fully agree with that.
But chapter 4, in which Sophie discovers several strange things. I will have to tell you, I love, chapter 4 just really takes off with the story, the personalities. I really enjoyed getting into chapter 4.
I was laughing so much as I read that chapter. With, between her and Howl, I was
Oh my gosh,
dying.
It's great.
It made me laugh so much. I love it.
So, okay, it starts off, so we left off, and Sophie had fallen asleep after making a deal with Calcifer. So, she wakes up, and, so it's already interesting, because she wakes up, and there's daylight streaming across her, but she's like, there were no windows on the outside of the castle. What's going on? So, immediately you're kind of like, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna be real, it really confused me, the layout, until I got to later. I was so confused with the layout of the castle. I was like, what is happening? What am I reading right now?
It's really interesting. I love how it gets into that. But, okay, so... At first she thinks it's all a dream. I obviously imagined this fire demon. That couldn't be possible. And,
little does she know.
Except then she wakes up and she's achy because, she's an old woman now. She slept in a chair all night, and then she's just like, my bones!
Honestly, old women or not, I would be achy too sleeping in a
chair.
Oh
my gosh.
Let's just be real.
I ended up in urgent care after I got a new pillow because I slept in my... I pulled a muscle in my neck. So believe me, I feel Sophie and being like, my bones. Yeah, me too. Let's see. Okay, and then, as soon as she wakes up, she discovers she's old. I loved this part. At that, so she discovered that her face had the wrinkles. At that, she discovered she had been in a state of shock all yesterday. She was very angry indeed with the Witch of the Waste for doing this to her. Hugely, enormously angry. So, she immediately, is just what? Wait, no! Like, when she realizes everything did happen, because the day before, she's, like, very calm, like, eerily calm for the situation.
Honestly, she was, yeah.
And it was just, like, she just, like, hands down accepted, I guess I'm an old woman now, and now she's like, no! I'm angry about it!
Which honestly justified. I'm glad she kind of, like
snapped out of it.
Senses about it. You know, she realized, wait, this is actually happening.
Like, she's so mad, she, like, jumps out of the chair. And she's just like, ah! Let's see. Okay, so then she gets up and she looks out the window. That shouldn't be there, but it is. And she sees, like, streets. And she's like, what the heck? Like, she's so confused as to, like, where she is. And so, do you remember how, like, scared she was of the skull? And, like, she kept looking at it, like, freaking out.
Yeah, she's, like, freaked out by it.
And
now
so,
she's kind of chill with it.
And so now, she says, wherever am I? Sophie asked the skull standing on the bench. I don't expect you to answer that, my friend. Like, she straight up is, like, talking to the skull now. Like, she kind of does a 180 to all of her opinions from the day before. Like, beforehand, she's, oh, I'm just an old, frail woman. Like, this is my life now. And then now she's angry. And before she was scared about the skull, and now she's like, hey, dude, like, where are we? Which, honestly, I love that.
I love so much of this.
Also, like, the castle's filthy. Like, she was just so grateful for the warmth, like, of the fireplace and everything. And she was just, like, so happy to, like, be out of the rain. And now she's like, this place is a pigsty. It's disgusting. There's, like, pink gloop. There's pink and gray slime in the sink. Like, ugh.
It's all horrible.
Like, she's horrified by how disgusting the castle is. And I'm like, it's two men and a fire demon living in this house. And she's just, like, horrified by the mess. I'm like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I loved that, like, going a little bit ahead is how horrified they were of her cleaning it all.
Oh my gosh,
like,
that created some of the best moments. And, like, okay, so this, leading into that, when she's going through the bathroom, and, like, so she describes the bathroom as, like, very opulent. Like, there's, like, obviously the big bath, there's, like, all sorts of, like, concoctions and stuff, but then she's like, it's disgusting. It's gross. But later on, when she, like, messes with it, and Howl's like, did you touch it? She's like, no! Oh my gosh.
I love that.
The drama.
No, I didn't do anything.
And, like, so some of the stuff is labeled, like, the drying power, and she, like, Sophie was not sure whether there should be a D in that or not. So it says drying power, not powder.
Oh
and so she's like, I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to touch that.
I kid you not, whenever I first read that, I didn't read the sentence after, I just read, like, it's called drying power, and I double-checked, and I'm like, is that supposed to be powder? I'm very confused. Literally, the sentence after saying that, like, whether or not there should be a D, I'm like, okay, the book's calling me out. It's literally reading my mind.
But yeah, like, the sink, the knobs have turned blue and green, and it should have been brass, and she's just like, ugh.
Oh, it's so bad, yeah.
Like, the disgust that she feels. So she's angry, she's disgusted, she's best friends with the skull now.
Yep.
Like, she's so different. Okay, this was one of my favorite phrases that I think I've read in this book. So it talks about the backyard that had the brick wall, and it contained a big stack of logs and higgledy-piggledy heaps of what seemed to be scrap iron. I love that phrase so much.
I was confused by that phrase, I'm not even gonna lie. I'm like, how would you, like, what is that description exactly?
I think it's like a hodgepodge, like, mix, or like...
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
Or like a precariously stacked, just like, I just imagine this, like, chaos heap of, like, nonsense.
Okay, I can actually picture that, because I remember, like, later as well, whenever he's just like, hey, don't mess with all of this stuff, I'm gonna lose track of it. Like, okay, that makes sense.
Man's got ADHD. But yeah, higgledy-piggledy. I freaking love that. It's so cute.
Is it even real words?
I mean...
I didn't look it up, but...
Okay, collywobbles is a real word, and I'm like, you know, it could be, or it's just... Cattywampus is a word.
Just fun. I gotta know. I've really gotta know if higgledy-piggledy...
Google.
Is it a word? I'm gonna Google it right now.
Dude, bro, do it.
Alright, let's see. Hig. This is hard because I'm trying to keep the book open with one hand, typing with the other. No way.
It
it's
is?
Actually a word.
Oh my god! Bring it back! Bring back higgledy-piggledy. I love it!
Right? So, adverb in confusion or disorder. So
There
I
you
guess that
go.
makes sense for that. For an adjective, it's involving confusion or disorder.
Okay,
basically just,
so...
like, it's all in disorder.
So
It's
it was what I was thinking.
Yeah. I just can't believe that's an actual word.
Like I said, collywobbles is a real word. Cattywampus, like these words do not seem like they should be words, but they are.
It really doesn't. How does I love it. Honestly, I love it.
I love it. Bring it back. Okay, so she's confused because like there's a back patio that she's like, this wasn't here, and she's looking at the rooms inside, and she doesn't understand how the rooms inside correlate with the outside that she's like seeing now. She's like, okay, she's like, I didn't see any windows, but there's windows in here, and there wasn't a patio in the castle, but there's a patio here. Like, what the heck? She's very confused.
I'm gonna be real, I'm still confused with her because I don't understand. Like, okay, I understand to an extent for one part, I might be going a bit ahead here, that they were saying, like, it was his house and they built the castle, like, around it, right?
Okay.
But I don't understand
It
how
makes
it's laid out at
it
all.
makes sense if you think about it, like, and you haven't seen Doctor Who, but it would make sense. It's like a TARDIS.
No, I haven't seen Doctor Who.
But so the castle, the interior of the castle, is actually his house in Port Haven.
Yes.
So that, like, the house okay, we're jumping ahead. Okay, so they're at the sea.
I guess what I don't understand is how there's a backyard.
Okay, because that's at Port Haven. So the whole dial on the door that spins to different locations. So when it's at green, they're at Port Haven. So the inside of the castle, like, the castle's always moving, but
Right.
when the door is down, they can go outside and they're in Port Haven. So if the dial wasn't green and they weren't in Port Haven, she wouldn't be able to get out to the patio because it would be different.
Okay.
So it changes, the outside of the layout changes. Think of the castle as like a teleporter. So, like, it looks the same on the inside, but the outside changes depending on that knob.
Yeah. I was understanding that because they were...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
going
just...
all over the place with it, but it's just...
This
very confusing to wrap the mind around.
Yeah, the castle itself is, like, the interior is built around, like, the Port Haven house.
Yeah.
Just the outside changes, and it's really interesting. They do a better job in the movie of kind of, like, showing, like, what it does. In the book, it's kind of like, okay, like, I understand it, but like I said, I've watched Doctor Who and whatnot, so I think I kind of, like, my brain is able to grasp it a little more because it's a familiar concept, but it is kind of weird.
Probably.
But yeah,
I'm like going in from an entirely outside perspective. No Doctor Who, I've not seen this movie or anything. Like, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around
Yeah,
this,
it's really strange, but it's all with that dial. So because they have to have the dial down, but the inside of the castle never changes. Well, I mean, not yet. But they
Spoiler.
Spoiler alert. But the inside, like, doesn't change the layout or anything, but the outside does. So they can't access certain areas when the dials change to different places. So, like, how she sees the outside and she sees the town, that's because they're in Port Haven at the time. Let's see. Okay, so she wakes up, Calcifer's there. So Michael wakes up and he's just like, "You're still here?" Like, he just expected her to just, like, walk out. I mean, because she jumped in from the marshes. And so I'm like, why would she just, like, she'd just leave and be in Port Haven and be like, I don't know where I am. But yeah, he's just like, you're still old? Is something wrong? And she's like, yeah, I'm old. Because she can't say that she's under a spell, so she can't be like, yeah, I was bewitched, and, you know, I'm actually a young girl, but now I'm old. But she's just like, I'm old. I'm like...
I mean, honestly, though, like, a hint, that's, like, just a huge hint for if he would pick up on it.
That's
you know what I mean?
That is another thing with Chapter 4, especially. There are so many hints dropped about, like, what's going on, like, the real nature of things, and, like...
I haven't picked up on a single
one. Oh
one.
my gosh, like... Having the foreknowledge to know this, I'm like, oh, it made so much sense. Believe me.
There was one part, too, that, what's the fire's name?
Calcifer.
Like, he said that he had dropped
a
hint at one point, and, like, I'm sure that he did, and I just missed it, because I don't know anything about, like, his deal with Howl or whatever. But I was curious about it.
But that's the
if
thing.
You knew what it was or anything.
It's so well done that even I didn't notice until he said, I have given you hints. And then I kind of went back and I was like, oh. I was like, that makes so much more sense. Like, I only caught it after watching it, like, reading it again. I was like, oh, now it all makes sense.
I didn't pick up on any of them.
That's the reason. It's so well done. And Sophie doesn't pick up on it. So we're not necessarily meant to pick up on it, but if you already know what's happening, then it makes sense. But that's why it's so well done, because he's like, I can't tell you, but he's like leaving these little breadcrumbs that they don't sound like hints. They just sound like him saying stuff, and you're like, oh. So it's meant to be kind of like a glaring light later. It's like, oh, okay, everything made sense now. I understand it.
So you're making me want to go back and try to guess, like, what the hints are.
Okay, so Michael's actually, like, happy now. He's just like, oh yeah, like, let's see. It's
tempted her being there.
Michael said cheerfully, well, it comes to us all in time. Would you like some breakfast? Sophie discovered she was a very hale old woman indeed. After only bread and cheese at lunchtime yesterday, she was ravenous. So she's like, yeah, it is funny how just, like, they accept her. She's just like, oh, yeah, just want to stay for breakfast. So he has only bread and cheese, and he's, like, kind of upset about it. He's just like, oh. Like, he doesn't want a cold breakfast. And she's like, but there's, like, a whole basket of eggs. I mean, 2025, rich people.
Honestly.
But she's like, and there's bacon. Like, what about a hot drink? And he's just like, well... and he says, Howl's the only one who can cook. And so he's like, well, nonsense. I can cook. I love how she's just like, she's making herself very well at home. But she's like, I can cook.
Right.
Like, child, who do you think I am? And then he's like, well, he's like, it's not that you can't cook. It's Calcifer. Because, let's see, it's Calcifer, the fire demon. He won't bend down his head to be cooked on for anyone but Howl. So we're already at this, like, sort of funny moment because they can't have a hot breakfast because Calcifer's like, I'm not letting you put that pan on the top of my head. But he'll listen to Howl. But Howl's not there, obviously. And so Sophie, she grabs the pan and she starts threatening him.
I loved it. I loved this part so much.
Oh, it's so funny because, yeah, it's just like, let's have no more nonsense. Bend down your head. You can't make me, crackled the fire demon. Oh, yes, I can, crackled Sophie back. Like, oh my gosh, it's so funny that she's, like, bullying this fire demon.
I love it.
Oh, it's so and she literally threatens him. If you don't, I shall pour water on you, or I shall pick up the tongs and take away both your logs. So she's pretty much threatening to kill him if he doesn't go along with this. And then, so it's like, that doesn't seem to make a difference. But then she, like, whispers to him, or I can go back on our bargain or tell Howl about it, can't I? And he's just like, dang it! Oh, curses, Calcifer spat. Why did you let her in here, Michael? So he, like, sulks, and then he, like, finally bends his head so she can put the pan on. And she's like, oh, thank you. And then she's all nice again.
I love his comment of just like, I hope your bacon burns.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
So funny.
I have a funny story about that. So, before I had read Howl's Moving Castle, and I think this was one of the things that made me want to, I saw at one of the conventions I went to this bag, and it had, like, a painted, Calcifer on it, and it had the quote, "May all your bacon burn," and I thought it was hilarious, but I didn't understand it. And then I watched the movie and I read the book, and I'm like, oh, I wish I had gotten that. But yeah, I could just imagine him. Yeah, I hope your bacon burns, Calcifer said, muffled under the pan. So he's like literally under this frying pan, and he's mad about it, but he did it. Oh my gosh. And, so then she starts, like, putting the bacon in, cracking the eggs, and then all of a sudden, oh, hello, Howl, Michael said helplessly. And then all of a sudden, but who is in the castle now? The guy she met in town who called her a little mouse.
I love it.
I love how he's described, because he's tall, in a flamboyant blue and silver suit. And he has a guitar. He brushed the fair hair from his rather curious glass green eyes and stared back. His long angular face was perplexed.
Okay, now one thing that I took note of, because they mentioned his eyes being like glass many times. And like, I know that he's very vain on his appearance.
Oh yes.
Like how it's talking about later. And, like, I don't know if it's, like, because his eyes are fake, which is why they're, like, not saying that he doesn't have eyes, like, clearly he does, but, like, I imagine, you know, wizard contacts is basically what's going on here. I'm wondering if he actually has, like, something going on with his eyes.
Actually, I don't think
but
so.
I don't know if that's true or not.
I think the glass green it's supposed to be, like, an uncanny sort of otherworldly, like, it's not a common color. So it just adds to his air of, like, otherworldliness, which is actually a hilarious statement. Spoiler alert for later. But, anywho, I think that it's just, like, what I imagine it to be is a very, like, pale green. And so it's not a common color by any means, and it's kind of striking. So it just adds another level of depth to his appearance, because he's supposed to be this scary, amazing wizard, and so it's just like, oh, okay, like, if he had, like, brown eyes or something like that, it wouldn't seem as mysterious and, like, different. But, yeah, his eyes are brought up a lot.
A lot.
I also wonder if it's, like, the glass aspect of it is because he doesn't have, like, a lot of depth in the beginning. Like, he's...
Maybe.
Like, it's a very shallow, like, hollow sort of look.
See, that's what I was wondering. Like, they just mention and compare it to glass so often. And, like, there's so many things that, like, I feel the author is doing specifically that I didn't want to, like, just toss that aside. Like, I feel like they're comparing it to glass for a reason. There's gotta be a reason, but I just don't know yet. They're still comparing it to glass.
It's one of those things, it's like, when an author says, if, like, the curtains are blue, does it really just mean the curtains are blue, or is it talking about, like, an emotional state, like...
Right. Well, I feel like there's, I don't know, this specific author feels like they...
are very purposeful.
Wouldn't put that note in there, they wouldn't make that comparison for no reason. You know what I mean?
Right. Let's see. Okay, so then Howl's confused. He's like, who are you? Where have I seen you before? I'm a total stranger, Sophie lied. So, yeah, and then it talks about how she met him. It's funny. So, let's see. She ought to have been thanking her stars for the lucky escape she had then, she supposed. but in fact her main thought was, good gracious, Wizard Howl is only a child in his 20 for all his wickedness. So, before, how she saw him as, like, an older man, she's like,
Yeah.
oh, like, what the heck? Like, because I think, we decided she's, like, 19?
Something like
and
that,
so she
yeah.
sees him as, like, an older man when she's young Sophie, but now she's like, oh, this rapscallion, this hooligan.
I thought that was so funny. I'm like, you literally called him old before, and now he's young. Like, make up your mind.
Her mentality switched so fast, it was like whiplash. And so now she's like,
Literally.
she's like, he's only in his 20s and he's already caused such a commotion, this whippersnapper.
Oh, it's so great.
It made such a difference to be old, she thought. She turned the bacon over in the pan. She would have died rather than let this overdressed boy know she was the girl he pitied on May Day. Like, I think she's kind of embarrassed because of how shy she was, and she's like, I would rather die than him find out. Like, oh, Sophie, she's so dramatic.
But at the same time, she also needs him to find out to help her, but like...
Right? Right? But the thing is, so what was interesting was I think he kind of recognized something in Sophie, because he said, where have I seen you before? So
Yeah.
there's that little just like sprinkle of tidbit, like he recognizes something in Sophie, because he asked like, where have I seen you before? So then, you know, Michael actually introduces her. She says her name's Sophie. Mm-hmm. She came last night. And then instead of like, oh, like, nice to meet you, Sophie, he's like, how did she make Calcifer bend down? Like, he's so curious. He's just like, wait a second. And then Calcifer, she bullied me. Not many people can do that, Howl said thoughtfully. And he's always described as smelling like flowers. Like, he's a very, like...
Yeah.
Very posh, just, like, pompous sort of person. Like...
Yes.
He's...
Looking fancy, smelling fancy.
And he doesn't... It's not like a manly, like, oh, he smells like leather or anything like that. No, he smells like flowers.
No, he smells like flowers.
Yeah. So he shoves Sophie aside. And then he starts cooking.
A great start to their relationship.
Oh yeah. And then she also like makes a point to she stares at the blue jewel hanging from his ear. So he's got an earring.
Yeah.
At least one.
Taking note of that, like again, like the author pointing that out, like I didn't know if that earring was gonna be something important, if it has something to do with him, or if it's just to be like, yeah, he looks fancy.
I think it's another like juxtaposition between like what's normal and what's not, because like all the rest of the people aren't really described, but like Howl, his outfits are described as these like lavish, you know, like over the top outfits, and he's got an earring. Like, he's way different from anybody she has met previously. So I think that's just another tally point of like another weird thing that is different about Howl than any person that she's met, because she's staring at it. So obviously she's not used to seeing like earrings and like jewelry, especially on a man. She's just like, oh.
Yeah.
So I think it's just another point of like, he's different. And then of course I came because I'm your new cleaning lady, of course.
The quick lie, quick thinking.
Oh yeah, so he's just like, and he's like, who said? And she's like, I do. And then she talks about how, like, it says, I can clean the dirt from this place, even if I can't clean you, from your wickedness, young man. And then Michael, I noticed he immediately jumped to Howl's defense and said, Howl's not wicked. And then Howl contradicts it. Yes, I am. Howl contradicted him. You forget just how wicked I'm being at the moment, Michael. He jerked his chin at Sophie. If you're so anxious to be of use, good woman, find some knives and forks and clear the bench. So he just, like, accepts that she says that she's the cleaning lady. He's just like,
yes.
I love, Michael's like, but he's not wicked. He's like, yeah? He's like, of course I am. And he's so easy to, like, fall into that. But it's funny because, like, Michael knows him as, like, his, so Michael's his apprentice. So he's a teacher to him, and he's lived with him, obviously. And
Yeah.
so for Michael to immediately defend him, but Howl's to contradict him, it's like, you kind of wonder how much of it is true, like all the rumors and whatnot. You're like, You're like, okay.
I wonder if there's something, like, I don't know if him saying, like, you forget just how wicked I'm being at the moment, like, what, was it just because of the interaction that they were having? Just because he was, I don't know, being snarky, or is he actually, like, I don't know what Howl is doing, or what he does, or anything, or if there's, like, something else that's going on?
So, I think that comes up later. It's the whole thing behind the castle.
That makes sense then.
So,
but I don't know any information on it yet.
Like it did come up in later in some of the other chapters that we read, but like why the castle has a purpose, and so I think that's the whole, like, he's talking about being wicked as in like the whole plan of what he's doing and why he's doing it.
Yeah.
And then he just like he doesn't even question like feeding her. He's just like, oh yeah, here, just go get some plates.
Right. I really do love as well, just going back to the fact that she literally hired herself to clean for
him. Oh yeah, and he like doesn't even question
it. Yeah.
Let's see. So then she's like, well, you can just like hire me for a month's trial. And he just like completely ignores what she's saying and just like eating his breakfast. Let's see. If I'm going to be cleaning here for the rest of the month, she said, I'd like to know where the rest of the castle is. I can only find this one room and the bathroom. To her surprise, both Michael and the wizard roared with laughter. So she is assuming that it's like, it's the castle, like, because the castle's huge. And, let's see. It was not until they had almost finished breakfast that Sophie discovered what had made them laugh. Howl was not only hard to pin down, he seemed to just like answering any questions at all, which is hilarious. Like, that's his like whole personality. He just will not answer questions. Yeah. He's always dodging and evading them. So she asks Michael, tell her, said Howl, and it will stop her pestering. There isn't any more of the castle, Michael said, except what you've seen in the 2 bedrooms upstairs. What? Sophie exclaimed. Howl and Michael laughed again. Howl and Calcifer invented the castle, Michael explained, and Calcifer keeps it going. The inside of it is just really Howl's old house in Port Haven, which is the only real part. But Port Haven's miles down near the sea, Sophie said. I call that too bad. What do you mean by having this great ugly castle rushing about the hills and frightening everyone in Market Shipping to death? Howl shrugged. What an outspoken old woman you are. I've reached the stage in my career where I need to impress everyone with my power and wickedness. I can't have the king thinking well of me, and last year I offended someone very powerful and I need to keep out of their way. So that's the whole thing. Like, he's avoiding responsibility. That's why he's being wicked. He's like,
He's just running away from the problem.
Literally, that was why he made the castle, so that he had out, so that he could just run away from all these problems. I'm like, bro. Like, he literally is just like, if my problems can't find me, they don't exist. So, and like the whole, I can't have the king thinking well of me. So he wants people to like assume the worst of him, and he wants to scare people because he just doesn't want to deal with responsibility. I'm like, oh my gosh, this young man. So they finish eating, and there was a knock at the door. Calcifer blazed up. Kingsbury door. Howl, who was on his way to the bedroom, went to the door instead. There was a square wooden knob above the door, set into the lintel, with a dab of paint on each of its 4 sides. Okay, so this is how... So they're at green right now, which is Port Haven. So he turns it to where it's red, and he opened the door, and there's a fancy person. I really find it interesting that they're describing the scent of people. Because when he opened the door... the scent of cloves and orange blossom blew into the room. So they're really big on like setting the scene and like what things smell like and like what things look like.
Now see, this is still where I I don't understand the concept of the door, but it also comes up with like what happens later with like.
So
I'll wait to bring this up until we get to, I think it's in like chapter 7.
So with the door, like I said, so the red, when he turn, so there's a knock at the door. Calcifer's magic, so he can know what's going on the outside of the doors. And so when there's a knock at the door, Calcifer, that's why he says it's the Kingsbury door. So they turn it to red. So now they're in, like, the outside is Kingsbury.
Yeah.
So that's
But that's what I don't understand quite.
So,
but like I said, it's something that comes up later in chapter 7, so that is what confuses me about it. But we'll get there.
Have you seen the movie Beetlejuice?
A long time ago.
Okay, so they draw the door and they knock on it and they open it, and then on the other side is the underworld.
Yeah.
So it's like this door is like a portal to other places.
Right. Which I understand.
Yeah.
But I think, like, okay, where I'm getting confused at...
Is it the interior that's confusing you?
It's not the interior, it's the door itself, right? Because the people are, like Howl and Michael end up leaving at points, right? And they come back.
Yes.
Right? And the castle's still moving, but they're coming back to other doors. But at the same time, this comes up way later, that the castle is like, I have to circle back to pick up Michael. And that's why I'm like, if it's a magic door, why do you have to circle back? Like, I don't know.
Okay, that is... I think that is the thing that...
That's why I'm confused.
Okay, I think we'll have to get to that in chapter 7.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. That's why I'm like, I'm really confused with it. I don't...
But I think with the interior, the concept is, like, if somebody came and opened the door to the shop when nobody was there, or if the portal wasn't turned to that, when they opened the door, it would be an empty room. Like Monsters, Inc.
Yeah.
Yeah! That's a better analogy. Like, so... If the door
that's
wasn't...
kind of how I was picturing the door at first. So that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's how... That is how that works. Let's see. Okay. They see the dude. So he's an agent...
Oh, wait. One more question with the door.
Yes.
So, like, is there a specific door, like, in Kingsbury and the other places that they're going to knock? Because clearly they're not walking up to the castle, right?
So, okay. Remember how they said that the interior was Port Haven?
Yeah.
So, he has an actual house in Port Haven. That's, like, where their home base kind of is. And then they have the doors. So, he has a shop in Kingsbury.
Okay.
So whenever they turn down the door knob to Kingsbury, it links them to that shop.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, it's a specific door. But like I said, if somebody was to come by and like break open the door when the knob wasn't turned down, they would come into like an empty building.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, no, but it's an actual shop because he operates as a wizard out of that city too. Yeah. So, yeah, the person is an agent of the king, and he, presents his compliments and sends payment for 2,000 pairs of 7-league boots. The 7-league boots will come in later, and they are hilarious. But there are
mention of something of that earlier on, too?
Yeah, so it's at the very beginning. It's like the first sentence, in the land of Ingary, where such things as 7-league boots and cloaks of invisibility really exist.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's literally the first line of the book. But yeah, they are magical items. They will be talked about later. But he made 2,000 pairs of these boots for the king. Let's see. So now she kind of peeks out, and she can see that there's like a very different kind of like area. So she describes sumptuous houses covered with painted carvings and towers and spires and domes beyond that, of a splendor she had barely before imagined. So Kingsbury is like the capital city where the king lives, so it is fancy. Sophie lives in Market Chipping, which is like a tiny little town, so she's never seen something like this, but it's literally right outside the door, but right outside the door before was the marshes, so she's like, what? So it's deep confusion. Let's see. So he gets paid. And then he turns the door to where the green blob is back, so they're in Port Haven again. Sophie saw Michael's eyes follow the purse in an urgent, worried way. So then Howl spends a ridiculous amount of time in the bathroom, like hours. Yeah. Like,
so much time.
He is like a peacock. That is the only way to describe him. He is such a vain little peacock. That
he really is.
He's like, I'm going to spend hours on my looks. He's so vain.
All the time.
Oh, it's hilarious. Sophie could not restrain her curiosity. Whoever was at that door, she asked Michael, or do I mean wherever? So, and Michael just nonchalant. That door gives on Kingsbury, Michael said, where the king lives. I think that man was the chancellor's clerk, and he added worriedly to Calcifer, I do wish he hadn't given Howl all that money. Is Howl going to let me stay here? Sophie asked. If he is, you'll never pin him down. He hates being pinned down to anything. So, Howl has commitment issues. He doesn't like to answer questions. He doesn't like to stay in one place too long. He flits about. That's...
Yes.
And I think Howl from the get-go really, like, blows Sophie's opinion, like, her preconceived notions of him out of the water, because she's like, she's waiting for this wizard, this evil wizard who, like, steals young girls' hearts and, like, you know, drives them mad. Like, she's expecting, like, the worst of the worst, and it's just some, like, really fancy guy who loves his hair. Who doesn't like to answer questions. And she's like, you're not what I was expecting. And it's hilarious.
Now, the thing with the money, what is he spending the money on?
Anything but good things. Like,
I mean, fair.
He spends a lot of it, I think, on just, like, random stuff for himself. And, like, obviously he, like, buys food and whatnot, but I think it's just the fact that he blows his money however he sees fit. And I think Michael is more mature than Howl, because I think Michael's thinking of, like, why doesn't he, like, invest and, like, do something better? But now he's like, oh, there goes the money.
Yep.
So that gets brought up a lot. Like, that Howl is very carefree with his money, with his time. He's just, like, does whatever he wants. Michael is just like, can't we be serious for, like, 10 seconds?
Poor Michael. Man.
Michael's trying to be the adult, and Hal's just, like, having none of his nonsense. And I think Michael's 15? And so, like, he's a very stern 15-year-old trying to get Howl to, like, calm himself down. And he's just like, nah. Okay, so that was the end of Chapter 4. Chapter 5, which is far too full of washing.
Honestly, accurate chapter title for this
completely. Completely. So, yeah, she just immediately starts off with, like, she gets into cleaning mode. So she puts, like, a handkerchief around her head. She's wearing an apron, like an old tablecloth as an apron. And then she just gets these buckets and just starts going ham. And this part, what are you doing? Cried Michael and Calcifer in a horrified chorus. These men are horrified that she's cleaning things. And, you know, I would almost say it's a trope, because I've seen so many movies where, like, the guy lives in filth, and then the woman's just like, okay, fine, I'm just cleaning this up. And then they're horrified. They're just like, no, I like the way this is. But Sophie's having none of it, and so she's just like, I'm cleaning. This place is a disgrace.
I honestly loved it. They were freaking out so much at her just cleaning. Literally.
Like hilarious. And Calcifer said, "It doesn't need it." And Michael muttered, "Howl will kick you out." But Sophie ignored them both. Dust flew in clouds. So, so the Port Haven door, Michael opens it. Actually, let's see.
It's just giving the spell for, like,
Sophie peered through the dust.
Was it the sea captain or something?
Okay, so maybe it's not, because Port Haven is... I kept saying it was green, but when he turns down the blue blob is Port Haven. So I think... Okay, so there's 4 sides. Green is the marshes, blue is Port Haven, red is Kingsbury, and black is Howl's little black hole.
Yeah.
So yeah, the small girl comes in, and it's a spell for her dad's boat. Probably for protection. And then the little girl asks, if the sorcerer... So that's another thing. He's always described as wizard, but in Port Haven, the little girl says, has the sorcerer got a witch working for him too? So now he's described as a sorcerer. Mm-hmm. And Michael's like, no. And Sophie's like, meaning me? Oh yes, my child. I am the best, cleanest witch in Ingery. So she so leans into this like, oh yes, I'm a witch. And yeah,
it feels like she's just trolling at that point.
Oh yeah. Sophie is chaos. She is an agent of cleanliness and chaos.
I love it.
Let's see. And so Michael shut the door looking exasperated. That'll be all around Port Haven now. Howl may not like that. So, like, the news is gonna spread. Like, oh, the sorcerer has a witch working for him? And, which is funny, because that kind of brings up later, like, gossip is a huge thing in this book.
Yeah.
Like, there was so much gossip around, like, the hat shop and stuff.
Much. She lives for the gossip, too.
Oh, yeah.
She enjoyed the gossip.
Oh, yeah. She's like, she loves to be nosy. Sophie is such a little gremlin. I love her.
She is.
Let's see. Let's see. But it might persuade Howl to let her stay if everyone thought she was working for him. It was odd. As a girl, Sophie would have shivered with embarrassment at the way she was behaving. As an old woman, she did not mind what she did or said. She found that a great relief. So she's like, I'm old, I'm shameless. Oh. She's like, as a wee lass, I would have been so embarrassed, but old women don't care. Let's see. Oh, okay, so this...
I imagine at one point she'll go back to being her young self again, and how her personality is going to change. Like, is she just going to go straight back, or is she going to maintain some of her...
Oh, it's interesting.
Fantastic personality.
It's interesting, I'll let you know. Let's see. She went nosily over as Michael lifted up a stone in the hearth and slid the little girl's coin under it. So he's hiding money from Howl.
Yes.
What are you doing? Calcifer and I try to keep keep a store of money, Michael said rather guiltily. Howl spends every penny we've got if we don't. So, feckless spendthrift, Calcifer cackled. He'll spend that king's money faster than I burn a log. No sense. So they're literally just like, he's terrible with his money. If we don't hide it, there will be none left.
Calcifer is in on hiding the money from Howl too. Like, he's just like, yeah, he's terrible with his money, hide it.
I love their relationship because supposedly, I mean, Howl and Calcifer are in a pact together. Like, Calcifer only really listens to Howl, but Calcifer hides things from Howl, and they're so antagonistic towards each other. I love the relationships that this book puts forth. Like, it's so funny, their dynamic that they have. And Calcifer, I feel like Calcifer and Sophie are on the same level of, like, gremlinness.
Yes.
Oh, like
Absolutely.
100%. Okay, so yeah, they're hiding money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, at this point, yeah, Howl was still in the bathroom. Howl came out of the bathroom just then in a waft of steamy perfume. He looked marvelously spruce. Even the silver inlets and embroidery on his suit seemed to have become brighter. He took one look and backed into the bathroom again with a blue and silver sleeve protecting his head. "Stop it, woman! Leave those poor spiders alone!" So he's like none the wiser that she's sitting here like cleaning like a mad woman, and his thing is like he's so mad about the spiders. He's like, "Leave them alone!"
So mad. He doesn't even care about the cleaning at that point. He's literally just like, "Don't touch the spiders. Don't touch the spiders."
Yeah, probably he had a wicked affinity with spiders, Sophie thought. So she's like, "I hate spiders. They're gross, they're creepy. Howl must be in league with the spiders."
But he just wants them around to kill flies. I feel like it should be more than just he wants them around to kill the flies, but you know.
I think that's his excuse. I think he really just likes the spiders, and he's just like, he wants to make the excuse of they're useful. It's like a dad who doesn't want a cat, but he's like, they hunt mice.
Yeah,
like, he secretly loves the cat, but he's just like, it's useful.
Exactly.
So, he leaves with the guitar, and then, let's see, where does he...
He goes the one with the...
If the red blob leads to Kingsbury, and the blue blob goes to Port Haven, where does the black blob take you? What a nosy old woman you are, said Howl. That leads to my private blot hole, and you are not to be told where it is. So he just like jumps out. He's just like, not for you to know.
Literally.
Pretty much. And then Michael's like, but when are you gonna be back?
Poor Michael.
And of course, does Howl answer? No. Pretending not to hear, he said to Sophie, "You are not to kill a single spider while I'm away," and the door slammed behind him. Michael looked meaningfully at Calcifer and sighed. Calcifer crackled with malicious laughter. Since nobody explained where Howl had gone, Sophie concluded he was off to hunt young girls again, and got down to work with more righteous vigor than ever. Oh my gosh.
She did so much cleaning in this chapter, man.
Oh, and it's fun. So this is funny. She did not harm any spiders after what Howl had said, so she banged at the beams with a broom, screaming, "Out, spiders! Out of my way!" And the spiders scrambled for their lives every which way. Webs fell in swaths. So she's cleaning, but now she's like, I don't want to risk killing a spider. Like, Howl said no.
Kind of sweet. Like, she listened to him.
I think it was slightly out of fear, but she's like, fine.
Absolutely.
Like, she begrudgingly is like, fine, I won't kill any spiders. And so she's not happy about it. She's like banging on the ceiling, and she's just like, meh. She's a grouchy old lady.
I like how poor Michael, though. Michael's so stressed about the cleaning, man. Like, he's just like, she's like, he'll be happy when it's clean, and he's just like, but I'm miserable now.
But I'm miserable now, Michael protested.
I love it.
It's so, and then
poor guy is so stressed.
Oh, he is so, like, he is about to just like have a heart attack. So she cleans all day, and then when Howl comes back, let's see, I'm like trying to get to like the middle part of a sentence, but Michael took a hold of Howl by a trailing sleeve and towed him up towards the bathroom, where Sophie could hear him pouring out complaints with a passionate mutter. Phrases like "terrible old biddy" and "won't listen to a word" were quite easy to hear, even though Calcifer was roaring, "Howl, stop her! She'll kill us both!"
Bro, their whining is so funny.
They're like two small children, just like, we don't want to take a bath.
Literally. They're like, Howl, stop her, she's cleaning, we're gonna die.
I just imagine, like, we're melting. Like, they hate the cleaning so much. And so,
oh, it's great.
The only thing that Howl says, "Did you kill any spiders?" Of course not, Sophie snapped. Her aches made her irritable. They'd look at me and run for their lives. What are they, all those girls whose hearts you ate? Howl laughed. no, just simple spiders. I love how she's grouchy and she's accusing him, like, she's trying to get to the point and, like, oh yeah, like, maybe it's those poor innocent girls, and he's like, nah, they're just spiders. Like, Howl has, like, no cares in the world. Like, Michael's sitting here, Michael's pouring his heart out, like, she's gonna kill us, and he's like, did you kill any spiders? No? Okay, you're good.
But at the same time, I mean, he goes into having stuff with, like, he does not want her in his room. I know that we haven't quite gotten to that part yet, but, like...
Oh, but it's hilarious how he goes about it.
That, man. It is. I loved it.
I think Howl is very, like, bird-like, because he likes shiny things. He likes pretty things.
Yeah.
And when she's, like, trying to clean his room, he's just like, no, I like it this way.
Yep.
But I see his behavior as very bird-like.
Makes sense.
So then Michael's just, like, completely resigned, and he goes and, like, finds a fold-out bed, and he's just like, here, you better sleep
I
here.
like that he was nice enough to give her a bed.
Oh, yeah. Does this mean Howl's going to let me stay? Sophie asked. I don't know, Michael said irritably. Howl never commits himself to anything, as we've seen. I was here 6 months before he seemed to notice I was living here and made me his apprentice. I just thought a bed would be better than the chair.
I want to know how exactly Michael and Howl met, and, like, if he was living there, was he living there for a reason, or, like...
I think...
I want to know how that relationship started.
At this moment in time, I would say it would he probably was looking to, like, apprentice under Howl, and he probably just, like, came in, and Howl probably did the same thing with Sophie. Like, Michael probably was like, oh, hey, like, can I apprentice under you? And he's just like, hey, go grab that thing for me. And then he just kind of, like, he just kind of stayed. This is a trend. Throughout this whole book. They take in misfits. Like, without question. Right. Like, without question, cause, concern, they're just, like, Howl kind of just accepts them. He's just like, oh, yeah, like, okay.
He's just like, you live here now.
Pretty much. So, yeah, like, Michael just lived with him for 6 months before he, like, officially was like, oh, okay, I guess you're my apprentice. And I think that just says a lot about Howl. Like, Howl, his carefree nature, like, he totally, like, Michael was living with him, and he wasn't like, hey, like, get out, this is my house. He's just like, oh, hey, I guess this dude lives here.
Yep.
Let's see. So she's actually very thankful, and Michael's so grouchy about it, but he's like, here, and she's like, oh, thank you so much. And so she's in that little cubby under the stairs, like a little Harry Potter room.
But what I like is that she ended up actually really liking it and, like, decorating it and taking care of that little spot, and she actually was like, I don't want to leave this little spot. This is a nice little spot. This is my little corner.
It's fantastic how she's, like, at the shop, I feel like she doesn't really feel completely comfortable. She's comfortable with the work in the sense that she's like, this is what I do a good job, but, like, actually living there, it doesn't ever feel like she's comfortable. Like, she's just kind of there to work, and it doesn't really feel like her home. Once she has her little, like, cubby hole, then she's just, like, she decorates it. She spruces it up. She really kind of takes ownership of that spot, and she makes it into something she likes. And her whole demeanor in the castle kind of shifts. She finds a purpose, like cleaning up after Howl. Yeah. It's not explicitly said. It's joked about, the whole, like, if I can't clean the wickedness from you. But, like, her whole thing, she kind of seems like she wants to, like, straighten Howl out. And so
I think that she just literally took on the role of, like, you know, getting them to make sense, getting them to, like, take things seriously.
She's kind of the mom figure. She's like the mother hen. And she's kind of like, oh, I'll just take care of everything. Like, she became the caretaker again, but this time it was because she wanted to. It's not that she was forced into that position. In fact, they don't want her to be doing that, but she's like, no, I'm going to do this. So, like, beforehand, where she was kind of made to be that responsible party, now she's just kind of like, nope, I'm going to do this. This is my job. And they're like, please don't. And she's just like, no, I'm going to.
I love so much that she just like took on the role. She's like, this is my job, and you're just gonna deal with it. This is my house now. Like, I love it.
Oh, yeah. In the days that followed, Sophie cleaned her way remorselessly through the castle. So she does not care one bit that everyone is like, please don't do it. She has no remorse. She's like Stone Cold Killer cleaning this house, and she does not care what they think. She really enjoyed herself. I think that's the most interesting thing. She really enjoyed herself. Telling herself she was looking for clues, she washed the windows, cleaned out the oozing sink, and she made Michael clear everything off the workbench and the shelves so she could scrub them. The human skull she fancied began to look as long-suffering as Michael. So, she likes the skull now.
Give me 1 second. Somebody just knocked on my door. I'll be right back.
Okay. But yeah, so far, I really like the book. I love Sophie's personality. Having read the book before, as I've stated, I didn't really pick up on a lot of things. Okay. Who was it delivery?
No, husband locked himself out of the house.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So yeah, she's having a good time. I think Sophie likes, and this is where I say in the beginning that I think she put a lot of pressure on herself. Sophie is a natural born caretaker, but the difference between being home and being here was her choice. So now she's kind of being who she wants to be. She's being a cantankerous old caretaker. And she's having a good time. She's even, like, she's befriended this skull. Like, she's not afraid of it anymore. She's not cowering from it. Like, she's like, oh yeah, he hates it that I'm moving him around so much trying to clean. Like, she's just so different now.
Yeah.
And she seems to be kind of thriving in this environment.
She really is.
Oh, and this... This really perfectly describes the relationship between her and Calcifer. And then she tacked an old sheet to the beams nearest the fireplace and forced Calcifer to bend his head down while she swept the chimney. Calcifer hated that. He crackled with mean laughter when Sophie discovered that soot had gotten all over the room and she had to clean it all again. So she's like cleaning the stove. He hates it. And then the whole room gets dirty again and he's like, hee.
Honestly fair that he's just like, hey, I hate that you're doing this, and she's like, well, I hate that you're making a mess. I love their relationship, man.
Like, they're like an old married couple that just want to poke at each other all the time.
Actually.
Like, it's hilarious.
It's so wonderful.
I just love them. And it's funny how, like, Calcifer and Michael have a relationship with each other that is outside of, like, Howl and Calcifer. Like, I just love them all together. They're just the funniest little group of people and fire demons.
Yes.
So
I honestly thought as well that Calcifer was gonna be, I guess, like, I don't know, more concerning to me than he was in the end, because I was like, fire demon, that must be really, really bad. But now he's just like sarcastic and I love it, and he's just like spiteful.
That's one of the things.
It's so funny.
We in like Western society have a very negative connotation with the word demon, but I think in this world they're more just like magical beings.
Yeah.
And I don't think, because they're not human, they're like spirits. So I don't think they mean demon as in like demonic, like evil. Like he's a mischievous, mystical, magical being.
Yes, exactly.
Who's now stuck in a fireplace and mad about it.
I so badly want to know why. It's always so hard to stop reading the chapters.
Oh, right? So
Like, I want to know the rest.
as she's cleaning, she starts, like, looking. Let's see. She calculated that she could not clean this thoroughly without sooner or later coming across Howl's hidden hoard of girls' souls or chewed hearts. Or else something that explained Calcifer's contract. So she's cleaning and she's like, I'm looking for clues, and she's waiting to find something that will like solidify her thoughts about Howl. She's like waiting to find like a dried up heart or something that she could be like, oh, see, I was right. He was evil all along.
Yeah.
Like, she's just waiting for something to pop out to just prove that she was right about everything.
But little does she know how wrong she is.
Every time Howl came in, Michael and Calcifer complained loudly about Sophie, but Howl did not seem to attend, nor did he seem to notice the cleanliness, and nor did he notice that the food closet became very well stocked with cakes and jams and the occasional lettuce.
Okay, that was random. I was like, why?
I'm assuming they...
lettuce?
Well, I'm assuming they ate like men, and they were eating like bachelor food, so like if it was these days they would have like nothing but like hungry man meals, but like she's like, lettuce.
Have a vegetable.
Pretty much. She's like, here, take a vegetable, they're good for you. Let's see. Okay, and then this is funny. For, as Michael had prophesized, word had gone around Port Haven. People came to the door to look at Sophie. They called her Miss Witch in Port Haven and Madam Sorceress in Kingsbury. So, like, gossip is huge. Yep. So now, it's been a couple days, and people already know about Sophie, and they're just like, oh, we want to see the witch.
Everybody's so fascinated by her, too. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's whenever they started to bring her, like, that's where it really settled for her, for that room, having people bring her, like they said, pictures, strings of shells, useful weapons, things like that, like...
Yeah, they bring her
just,
gifts.
Decorated it and everything. I love that they're just, like, bringing her stuff just because, like, as an excuse to go see her, you know?
Yeah.
They're just like, yeah.
I love that. They're just like so fascinated by her, and so they bring her little trinkets, just like, I want to see the witch that's working with the wizard.
Yep. It's so cute.
Sophie knew she would miss this when Howl turned her out. She became more and more afraid that he would. She knew he could not go on ignoring her forever. So she starts to make her little cubbyhole into a home, and she realizes now she's scared that it's all gonna go away. Like, she kind of found a place that she likes, where she actually feels comfortable, which I feel like is a new thing for her, to actually feel comfortable somewhere.
Yeah.
And she assumes that Howl's going to kick her out. She's like, he can't keep just... I mean, Michael lived with him for 6 months, and then he became an apprentice. But she's so worried that Howl's going to, like, be this mean person and kick her out and take what she loves from her. And so she's just, like, so worried. And Howl is just none the wiser. He just goes on and does what Howl does. He spends hours in the bathroom, goes and leaves through the door. And she's just, like, waiting for the day. She's like, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And it never does. I think she kind of gets perturbed with him, because she's waiting for something bad to happen, and when nothing does, she's just like, hey, like, what gives?
Yeah, she's like building up the expectation for it, but it just never happened.
Yep. Oh, and here comes Sophie cleans the bathroom. She cleans it and then tries to put things back where she thinks that they were.
Tried her best.
She's like, yeah, sure, that looks like that bottle went there.
I like that she thought, though, because, like, the ones labeled, they said skin, eyes, and hair.
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, these are pieces of girl. They have to be 100%.
Oh, yeah.
But instead, they're just, like, moisturizers or something like that. You know what I mean? Like...
It's because she's looking for the worst in him. She's like, I think she so badly wants him to be what she expects, because, like, she has all these, like, the whole thing with, like, the eldest of 3 kids being, like, the one who can't seek their fortune and everything. She has so many ideas that she, quote-unquote, knows to be true, but then everything that she knew is not what she thought she knew. And so I think she's just kind of like, everything has flipped for her. So it's like when you are certain of the truth and you find out it's not the truth, then it's like, okay, well, what else? What else has gone, completely over my head? Like, what else don't I know? So I think she's searching for some sort of reality with him.
Yeah.
Like, of the things she's certain, eldest children can't go seek their fortune, and Howl's evil. So she wants the facts and what she finds to line up with that, but they're not. And I think it's confusing for her, especially finding a place that she loves with someone who's supposedly evil. But it's like working out for her.
Yeah. But honestly, it's kind of like what happened with like her sisters, right? It's kind of showing her like things don't have to like line up with that, because her sisters, they changed what was supposed to happen for them whenever they swapped places, right?
Exactly.
And so now that's kind of the same thing that's happening to her, even though she thinks she can't find her fate and she can't be happy anywhere else, she's stuck being a hatter. It's like all kind of flopping on her.
Yeah. Because that was the whole thing with her sisters, is she thought she knew them. And come to find out she was like wildly wrong about what they wanted. And then, so she seems to have all these like black and white expectations of things, and then she's discovering that the world is just all these different shades of gray and nothing's black and white.
Exactly.
So then we get to the nitty-gritty of where Howl is going. So then when are you going to stop cleaning and find out about how to break my contract? This is Calcifer. In good time, said Sophie. How can I get the terms out of Howl if he's never in? Is he always away this much? Only when he's after a lady, Calcifer said. So he is pursuing women.
Yes.
And then you find out that Michael is sneaking out, and Michael has a sweetheart who he's seeing. So everyone's courting people.
Yes. So you find out that Howl is more of a player and he courts a lot of women.
But only until they say they love him, and then he's just like, nah.
And then he runs away.
He has so many commitment issues. He loves to play the game, but he wants no commitment.
And he even said at one point that he was like treating it like a game too.
Oh yeah.
And Sophie calls him out on it. She's like, what about like all of these girls that hearts you're just breaking because you're playing this game? Like, oh, it's so good.
So yeah, so Michael leaves to go see his sweetheart. She's nosy.
She's so nosy.
You'll be the death of me. You're as heartless as Howl, Calcifer choked. Only his green hair and a blue piece of his long forehead showed. Because I think she, dumped ashes on him or something? Or, yeah.
Dust and rubbish and stuff, yeah.
So then Michael actually gets a little upset with Howl. He said, I wish Howl would listen to us, he said. Why is this girl taking him so long? So he's been working on the same girl for a while now. Which apparently is everyone just fawns over him, so it doesn't take that long. But for some odd reason, this girl's taking a while.
And it's like curious why.
Yeah, they're just like, Let's see. So, okay, and then Sophie paints. Mm-hmm. She whitewashes part of the house. What's happened in here? Howl asked when he came in on the third day. So he was gone for like 3 days. It seems much lighter. Sophie, Michael said in a voice of doom. It was just Sophie. I should have guessed, Howl said as he disappeared into the bathroom. He noticed, Michael whispered to Calcifer. The girl must be giving in at last. So I guess, like, while he's on the hunt, he's very distracted. But now that he's starting to, like, notice details, they're like, oh, it's gonna be over soon.
I love how concerned they are about it, too. They're just like, oh, it's such a mess every single time. He's
right?
no focus.
Like, I think because Michael is his apprentice, he can't learn anything if Howl's not there. And so he's just like, come on, man. Oh, this part is the hilarious one with Howl's bedroom.
Oh my gosh, yes.
She collected her besom, her bucket, and her soap, and as Howl was out of the door, she set off like an elderly avenging angel to clean Howl's bedroom. But, okay, so she sees him leave. She waits until he leaves.
Yep.
She arrived on the landing and found Howl was standing in the doorway of his bedroom. He was leaning lazily on one hand, completely blocking her way. "No, you don't," he said quite pleasantly. "I want it dirty, thank you." She's so confused. She's like, what? Where did you come from? I saw you go out. I meant you to," said Howl. You'd have done your worst if Calcifer... You'd done your worst with Calcifer and poor Michael. It stood to reason that you'd descend on me today. And whatever Calcifer told you, I am a wizard, you know. Didn't you think I could do magic? This undermined all of Sophie's assumptions. She would have died rather than admit it. Everyone knows you're a wizard, young man, she said severely. But that doesn't alter the fact that your castle is the dirtiest place I've ever been in. So, like... It literally says that it undermined all of Sophie's assumptions. Like,
yes.
Thus far, we really haven't seen him do magic. Like, all we've seen of him is he's cooked and he's done his hair. Like, he spends hours in the bathroom. We have not yet seen anything magical from Howl. And the first thing that he does magical around her is trick her into thinking that he left. He's so... Oh gosh, give me 1 second. Sorry, my husband's calling me.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I also find it so funny that, like, he, you know, it was, like, shown, I'm gonna have to bring this up with Rose again, but he has shown how, like, or they were saying how he wasn't paying any attention to anything that was going on, but clearly he knew, like, the order that she was cleaning in, and, like, the things that she was doing and whatnot to be ready for her to eventually reach his room. Like, he was prepared for it all this time. And the fact that he tricked her too, I've got to ask Rose's opinion on this as well, for, like, why not just tell her not to? Why go to all the trouble just to trick her? You know what I mean? But I'll wait for Rose to get back to really go into more detail on all of that. I love it. This book is so funny. The characters in it are so funny. Their interactions are so funny. Most of the time, most of this book, I'm just laughing because all of the character interactions are just great, and how they interact with each other. Also a good time for a drink break.
Sorry, he was asking me if I wanted a Sonic drink. I heard you say that you needed to ask Rose's opinion.
You're totally good. About a few things, yeah. Just like talking about, what was just mentioned. So, like, with the fact that he had, like, this is one of the things, with the fact that he had gone to the extent to use magic to trick her into thinking that he was leaving, rather than just be like, don't clean my room, he went so far as to actually trick her.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I think the thing with that is, does he really think that Sophie can curb her, like, cleaning mania and leave his room alone? Like, yes, she didn't kill the spiders on his request, but he obviously does not trust her to leave his room alone.
Yes, clearly he does not.
But
the other thing as well, okay, this is the other thing that I noticed, is the fact that he did... Like, he's noticed the cleaning, and he's noticed what's been happening. He's been listening to them complaining about it. He knows, like, from what they said, that she's been doing all the cleaning and whatnot, and he knew that she would be coming for his room next. Mm-hmm. So he's clearly paying attention, even though he acts very careless, you know what I mean?
Okay.
He's paying some attention.
I have big opinions about that, because it comes up later in a part with him and Michael. Howl does a lot of things that people don't, I think, realize that it is what it is. Because he's a lot more present than people think he is. I think he wants people to underestimate him, but he is way more capable than people seem to think.
Honestly, that's fair.
Like, he wants people to underestimate him. And in moments like this where it didn't, like you said, he could have just told her, like, hey, don't clean my room. But he made a show of it. Like, he made it into this, like, proving a point, also being cheeky and hilarious.
Yes.
But, like, the whole, like, and then they get into this little spat, about the room, and he's like, so she's looking into his room, and he's like, don't be nosy. I'm not being nosy, Sophie protested. That room, yes, you are nosy, said Howl. You're a dreadfully nosy, horribly bossy, appallingly clean old woman. Control yourself. You're victimizing us all.
I loved that. I loved Howl saying that.
Like, it's so funny. Because, I mean, I don't think Michael's ever, like, called her any names to her face.
No,
but, like,
not at all.
He called her a horrible old biddy to Howl. But he never said anything directly to her. And, like, Calcifer groans, but, like, Howl stands up to her and he's like, you're a horribly bossy old woman. And
I love it.
It's just so funny. Like, I think he's just proving a point to Sophie, because I think he started to realize that Sophie kind of was not, like, how to put this? He knew what Sophie was thinking, because she makes it abundantly clear that she thinks that he's some, like, horrible, wicked person. And I think he knows that she underestimated him, and then he's just like, just for show. Just to throw some flair in there, like, hey, guess what? Like, I am magic, just remember that.
He does that a few times, too.
Yeah.
Kind of reminding her of that.
So, let's see. So she's mad. She's like, it's so filthy, it's a pigsty. I can't help what I am. Yes, you can, said Howl. And I like my room the way it is. You must admit I have a right to live in a pigsty if I want. Now go downstairs and think of something else to do. Please. I hate quarreling with people. So, I think that's why he avoids confrontation. Like, he avoids questions because he doesn't like any sort of confrontation. And he avoids it like the plague. He avoids quarreling and responsibility like the plague.
He really does, yeah.
So, let's see. And this is interesting right after that. So she walks away. She was a little shaken and very surprised that Howl had not thrown her out of the castle on the spot. But since he had not, she thought of the next thing that needed doing at once. So she got scared because she was thinking that he was going to kick her out. Like, she fought with him. They got in a little tussle. He very pointedly says that he does not like fighting, and she likes fighting with him.
Yeah.
So I think she was, like, she actually was scared in that moment that she had, like, pushed things too far and that he was going to throw her out. But he doesn't. Like, he still lets her stay.
Yep. I love that too.
Let's see. So, okay, so then she goes out to the patio and she starts cleaning the metal. And Howl appeared again, stumbling slightly in the middle of the large sheet of rusty iron. Sophie had been going to move next. Not here either, he said. You're a terror, aren't you? Leave this yard alone. I know just where everything is in it, and I won't be able to find the things I need for my transport spells if you tidy them up. So,
exactly what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like...
And so he says not to clean it because he's like, I know where everything is. So there was probably a bundle of souls or a box of chewed hearts somewhere out here, Sophie thought. She felt really thwarted. So, like, she thinks he's trying to hide something, but really he's just like ADHD brain going, I know where everything is, don't touch it.
Yep, exactly.
So she's kind of seeing more meaning in why he's trying to keep her away. She can't fathom, like, he likes things the way they are. She's like, no, he's hiding something. There's something nefarious going on. Like, she cannot seem to think well of him, no matter what the situation is.
Well, of course, he eats girls' hearts.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
According
She's
to her
like,
right now, anyway.
He's terrible. He's awful. Now trot along indoors, you overactive old thing, and find something else to play with before I get angry. I hate getting angry. He hates any sort of, like, negative emotions. So he doesn't like fighting people. He doesn't like getting angry.
Yeah.
Like, he really...
He kind of just wants to live happy. He just is just, like, carefree, live happily on his own.
Oh, that's exactly what's going on. He just wants to live his life as he sees fit. And, like, every time somebody tries to bring some sort of, like, negativity into his life, he's just like, nope, not for me.
Yep.
Let's see. Sophie folded her skinny arms. She did not like being glared at by eyes like glass marbles. Of course you hate getting angry, she retorted. You don't like anything unpleasant, do you? You're a slitherer outer. That's what you are. You slither away from anything you don't like. And this is what's interesting, because this is what actually upsets him. So, beforehand, he was just like, hey, like, I don't like getting mad. But now, Howl gave a forced sort of smile. Well now, he said, we both know each other's faults. Now get back into the house. Go on, back. He advanced on Sophie, waving her towards the door. The sleeves of his waving arm caught the edge of the rusty metal, jerked and tore. Damnation, said Howl, holding up the trailing blue and silver ends. Look what you've made me do. I can mend it, said Sophie. Howl gave her another glassy look. There you go again, he said. How you must love servitude. He took his torn sleeve gently between the fingers of his right hand and pulled it through them. As the blue and silver fabric left his fingers, there was no tear at all. There, he said. Understand? So, in a way, this scene for me had a little bit more meaning because he can fix, like, his fabric without her needing to mend things or anything. Like, in that moment when he's kind of mad at her, to me, that really seemed like see, I don't need you. Like, it kind of, for me, he's been letting her stay, and she kind of assumed it was because he was just, like, okay with just having a cleaning lady. He did not need her. He could have done everything with magic, but he chose not to. And to me, it shows that he has a conscious decision to let her stay.
Yeah.
Rather than, the whole, like, with Michael, Michael lived there for 6 months and he, like, didn't even know, like, that whole thing. I think with Sophie, and I mean, probably with Michael, he just lets people assume that he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's fully aware of everything that's going on. So this, to me, had that sort of meaning that, like, he's telling Sophie, see, I don't actually need you. I'm letting you stay here. Almost as a bit of a warning.
I think that's exactly what's happening.
So...
And then right after at the end, too, with her, like, why didn't he turn me out?
Yep.
For asking that to Michael.
And
he's just like, it beats me, but I think he goes by Calcifer. Most people who come in here either don't notice Calcifer or they're scared stiff of him. So that's another thing, too, that makes me wonder, like, did Michael end up noticing Calcifer, which is why he was in? Also, the castle listens, like, it's run by Calcifer.
Yes.
And it stopped for Sophie. Why did it stop for Sophie?
So, that's...
Why is Calcifer listening to her? That's
one of those things that has more meaning to it than you could ever know until you get into later parts of the book.
Yeah.
But that is the point, is Calcifer, who operates the castle, bows to Sophie. She bullies him, but he's a fire demon. He doesn't have to yield, but he chooses to fight with her, to yield to her. He doesn't try to intimidate her. He doesn't try to, like, scare her, be like, I'm a fire demon, you can't tell me what to do. Like, he does it, and he fights with her. So have you noticed how both Howl and Calcifer have a very similar relationship to Sophie?
Yeah. So
it's going to be interesting, is all I'm saying. But they both have...
There's something there, and you're like, I want to say this.
Oh, I want to say it so bad. But they both have this sort of antagonistic relationship with her. Like, Howl to a lesser extent, because he just wants to be carefree. But in these serious moments, you can see, like, he gets kind of grouchy with her. He's like, you're a horrible, mean old lady. But he still lets her stay, and the same with Calcifer.
Uh-huh.
Like, Calcifer's magic. He could have kicked her out. He could have, like, barred her from the castle. But he
Let's just
listens
be
to
really
her.
here. Calcifer didn't have to stop the castle to begin with.
Oh, no.
But he did.
He didn't have to. He didn't have to let her in.
Yeah.
And that's...
For some reason he did. And that's
the
what I want to get to.
fascinating
That's what I
part.
want to know.
That's the fascinating part of all this, is things are happening. There's an undercurrent here. There was already, as we were going through the chapter, I saw a really big hint that didn't sound like a hint, but it was.
I really want to know what the hint
And
was.
I'm just like, oh, would you look at that? It's
Can
just...
I know what... I really want to know what the hint was.
No, because it would...
I must
it'll,
know.
No, you get to read the book.
I need to know.
It'll give it away.
I hope... At least do me a favor and note it down so that when we get to, like, later parts, you can refer back to it.
Okay.
To point it out to me. Because I gotta know. I gotta know what the hint was.
Because, like I said, I didn't even notice until later on. And then I was like, oh crap, like, it's there. Like, okay, let me... I even have little arrow sticky tabs that I will mark it down with.
Perfect.
But, yeah, no, there are little hints, and it's like, oh.
I want to know the hints so bad. I want to know what I'm missing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like, obviously, if I read through the book a second time and was looking for it...
Yeah, then things start to make sense. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But reading through it the first time, it's all going over my head.
Okay. And it's funny, because he says that people either don't notice Calcifer or they're scared of him. Sophie not only noticed him, but she was not scared of him. Like, maybe a little...
No, she just chatted with him.
Like, at first, she's kind of like, oh, like the fire, it's got, like, it could be a little person. And she starts pointing out the pieces, and then when she finds out it is, she's like, oh, hey. So
casual conversation makes a deal with him, like...
I think it also goes to show, though. So Sophie, we've already seen, has some sort of magic thing going on.
Yeah.
Michael obviously has magic as well, since he is Howl's apprentice. And the three of them both interact and have relationships with Calcifer. So I think that also shows a little bit more. Because... Is
it just the fact that, like, they have magic, you're meaning?
I think that's what it's pointing out. Because if normal people come in and they either don't notice Calcifer or they're scared of him, but the three of them don't have, like, they acknowledge him and there's no fear, I think that sort of shows that there's a similar thread for Sophie, Michael, and Howl.
Which would make sense if it's magic, considering Howl's a wizard, Michael's a wizard in training, and Sophie has some kind of magic.
Yeah. So, I think that was a little interesting, like, sprinkle of information there.
Yeah.
Okay, and that brings us to chapter 6, in which Howl expresses his feelings with green slime.
Oh my gosh, this chapter.
Oh, it was hilarious. He's such a teenage boy.
He is. It's so dramatic.
He's such a dramatic, moody little boy.
Oh, so funny.
So, it's interesting, because Howl stays in for a couple days, which is, like, very unlike him so far. So, everyone's starting to be like, ah. Like, it's kind of weird that he's actually staying in.
Yeah.
Okay, this is fascinating. So, Howl did not go out that day, nor the next few days. Sophie sat quietly in the chair by the hearth, keeping out of his way and thinking. She saw that, as much as Howl deserved it, she had been taking out her feelings on the castle when she was really angry with the Witch of the Waste. So, like, all the inhabitants of the castle, like, she's been kind of, like, a crabby old lady, but she
has been a crabby old lady.
Oh, very. But she realizes that it wasn't their fault. She's mad at the Witch of the Waste, but there's, obviously, the witch isn't there, so she can't do anything against the witch. But she's been taking out her... She thinks that Howl deserves it, because she still thinks that he's, like, wicked and evil. But, like, the rest of the castle...
Like, I think she's just probably comparing, like, the fact that, you know, person with magic did this to her, Howl's the person with magic, and she's just taking it out on the next closest person she can. But I also find it interesting that she got so angry at this point with the Witch of the Waste, whenever she accepted it so much at first. But she's finally, like, coming around and being like, yeah, this sucks. Screw that witch, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like, because she's like, I must have been in shock yesterday because now I'm pissed.
Yep.
So yeah, so she's angry, but I still think, because the whole, like, as much as Howl deserved it, like, Michael and Calcifer don't necessarily, she doesn't think that they deserve it, but she still thinks that Howl's evil and rotten, and she's just like, nah, he deserves the hate, but, like, not everybody else.
Everybody else is nice, but not Howl, though.
Yeah, so she was a little upset at the thought that she was here on false pretenses. Howl might think Calcifer liked her, but she knew Calcifer had simply seized on the chance to make a bargain with her. Sophie rather thought she had let Calcifer down. So she feels bad because she's lying to Howl, saying that she's just here to be a cleaning lady. She's really looking for A, proof that he's evil, and B, proof of the contract so that she can break the contract so she can get out of her spell. So she feels bad about lying to them.
Yeah.
And she, at this point in time, she doesn't think that Calcifer really likes her. She's like, oh, like, no, he just made a deal with me. That's the only reason that he's, like, not hating me. And so she makes herself feel bad because she's like, well, I obviously haven't been, like, trying hard enough to fulfill my end of the deal to help Calcifer. So she's kind of moping around, feeling a little sorry for herself, and then that mood changes when she realizes that Michael's clothes need mending, and so she has a purpose again. So she's like, she gets a bit more lively, and so she's sitting there, and she's, by that evening, she was cheerful enough to join Calcifer's silly little song about saucepans. Happy in your work? Howl said sarcastically. I need to do more, said Sophie. My old suit needs mending, if you have to feel busy. So
that's an interesting one, because he proved that he doesn't need her to mend anything.
Exactly.
Then he's giving her something to do, just to give her something to do.
Like, I think because he sees how bad she feels not doing anything and not being useful, and so he told her essentially with the first, when he mended his own clothes, like, he doesn't need her, but he's being kind and giving her what she needs to feel good, because she needs to be working for her to feel useful, for her to feel good. Mm-hmm. So he's giving this to her as, like, a little bit of a peace offering, like, here's something to do.
Yeah.
So I really liked that little tidbit of, like, hey, no, like, here's some busy work to keep you going, when he could do it himself, but he's being nice to her. So, let's see. This seemed to mean that Howl was no longer annoyed. Sophie was relieved. She had been almost frightened that morning. It was clear that Howl had not yet caught the girl he was after. Sophie listened to Michael ask rather obvious questions about it, and Howl slithering neatly out of answering them. So, let's see. She calls him wicked again.
Yep.
She watched Howl being restlessly busy in order to hide his discontent. There was something that was something Sophie understood rather well. So, without going out and without having something to do, so without his game of trying to pursue a woman, he has nothing to do. So he's trying to keep himself busy around the house, and Sophie's like, yeah, I get that. So, at the bench, Howl worked a good deal harder and faster than Michael, putting spells together in an expert but slapdash way. From the look on Michael's face, most of the spells were both unusual and hard to do, but Howl would leave a spell midway and dash up to his bedroom to look after something hidden and no doubt sinister going on up there.
Like, she's just assuming. She's assuming so much.
She has to just throw that in there. Like, she literally just like, and obviously sinister.
Obviously not.
Going up there, and then shortly raced into the yard to tinker with a large spell out there. So he's doing these like really hard spells, these complex, hard spells, and then he can just get up and move away and come back to it and just like finish it like it was nothing. So I think this is where he really shows his skill. Like, he's a brilliant wizard. Like, he's on his A game, and he's obviously got so much skill, but people are very unassuming of him because that's how he wants it. But when he actually puts his mind to it, he's like an expert. So I really loved that because it shows that, and it shows kind of what Michael was looking for, because Michael just wants him to be at the castle, not chasing the girls. Because when he is there, he's like epic. And he's just like, see, this is my teacher. I need to be learning from this man. So it's
he's out chasing girls.
Oh yeah, he's out chasing girls. Let's see. They work on a spell for the king. Let's see. Okay, so then a man for the king comes up and asks him for a spell. He tries to get out of it. Like, he's just like, wow, where did it say? It was... I actually got a big laugh about that.
I'm not sure which part that is.
Oh. It's right here, at the bottom of page 103. Let's see. The spell was for the king. Another overdressed and scented messenger arrived with a letter and a long, long speech in which he wondered if Howl could possibly spare time, no doubt valuably employed in other ways, to bend his powerful and ingenious mind to a small problem experienced by His Majesty. To wit, how an army might get its heavy wagons through the marsh and rough ground. Howl was wonderfully polite and long-winded in reply. He said no. I imagine this guy shows up and gives like this really grand, like flattering speech, like, oh, Wizard Howl, would you please condescend to give just a moment of your busy time? Like, he is flattering him. He's just lavishing him with like, would you please bend your ingenious mind? And like, Howl was wonderfully polite and long-winded in reply. He said no. I got such a laugh out of that. But
I love it.
But the messenger spoke for a further half hour, at the end of which he and Howl bowed to one another, and Howl agreed to do the spell. It's like Sophie. The guy annoyed him into doing it, and he's like, fine.
Yes.
Oh, like, okay, have you ever seen the movie Austin Powers? Like, any of those?
No.
Oh my gosh. There's a character who if you ask him a question 3 times, he'll answer it because he can't stand being asked a question multiple times. And that's just like Howl. Like, if you bug him long enough, he'll just do it. Because he doesn't want to argue with people.
It's so good.
And then, so this is a bit ominous, Howl said to Michael when the messenger had gone. What does Suleiman have to get himself lost in the waste for? The king seems to think I'll do instead. So Suleiman was the court wizard. So he was like the king's personal wizard.
Didn't they think that he had died though?
Yes.
But Howl doesn't think that he's actually dead. Right?
Kind of.
Kind of?
Kind of. Howl knows more than he's letting on, but so now he's mad because obviously Suleiman's gone, and the king is like trying to get Howl to work for him, and he's just like, Howl, who hates commitments, is like, nah. I remember when he said that like he can't have the king thinking well of him. He's trying to avoid responsibility by being bad.
Yeah, he's like, please do not hire me.
Let's see. So right after, the king seems to think that I'll do instead. He wasn't as inventive as you, by all accounts, Michael said. I'm too patient and too polite, said Howl gloomily. I should have overcharged him even more. Howl was equally patient.
Take advantage of the situation. I love that.
So this part where he says, I'm too patient and polite, it seems like a joke. Like, oh, like, I'm just too nice. Like, but then you get to the next part. Howl was equally patient and polite with customers from Port Haven, but, as Michael anxiously pointed out, the trouble was Howl did not charge these people enough. So, he said that he should have overcharged the king's man. But for regular people, Michael thinks that he's undercharging them. And he's...
Also, in, like, Port Haven, he's serving, like, regular people, right? He's serving, like...
Yeah, they're
civilians and whatnot.
Yeah, it's more of a common town. So like how Sophie comes from a tiny little town, it's probably a step up because it's a port town, but they're still they're sailors, they're regular people.
And I remember like at one point, I don't know where this was at. I'd have to like really go back through everything and whatnot, but I think that Sophie had described Port Haven as more of like a poor place as opposed to Kingsbury, which is like a very rich and wealthy place.
Kingsbury is like the richy rich neighborhood, like so opulent and everything. Like I said, Port Haven, it's a port town. So you have sailors and fishermen and you have like salt of the earth sort of people.
So it's kind of like Howl is charging, for the area, basically. He's being nice to the people who can't really afford the magic as much, but then he's like, these people are rich, I'm just gonna charge them a lot.
See, but it goes against his... like, what Sophie thinks of him. Because she would probably expect him to, like, overcharge these like, more poor people. And... But he's... So this part right here. So after Michael anxiously pointed out that Howl didn't charge people very much, this was after Howl had listened for an hour to the reasons why a seaman's wife could not pay him a penny yet, and then promised a sea captain a wind spell for almost nothing. So he's... Like, this poor lady, she wants a spell for her husband's boat so probably it doesn't sink. And, like, she probably is begging him for, like, an hour. And he just, like, gives in, like, oh, okay. Like, he's so kind to these people.
Yes.
And Sophie's probably over there going, like, what? she's probably thinking it's he's probably got, ulterior motives. He's probably doing it, just for... just to throw people off. But, like, Howl eluded Michael's arguments by giving him a magic lesson. So Michael's like, no, you need to be charging these people more. And he's like, let me show you how to do this. So he's dodging Michael's concern. Literally, that is what, he's like, distraction! Distraction! That's his go-to! And so, like, it's not something he wants Michael to talk about. He doesn't want Michael to bring up charging people and whatnot, because he's doing what he wants to do and he doesn't want to overcharge people. He is an amazing wizard. He could probably charge premium for his services, but he's not. He's just being
kind.
He's being kind. He's being a very chill sort of dude.
Yeah.
And so when he's teaching Michael, this is another interesting thing. Sophie sewed buttons on Michael's shirt and listened to Howl going through a spell with Michael. I know I'm slapdash, he was saying, but there's no need for you to copy me. Always read it right through. Carefully first. The shape of it should tell you a lot, whether it's self-fulfilling or self-discovering, or simple incantation, or mixed action and speech. When you've decided that, go through again and describe which bits mean what they say and which bits are meant as a puzzle. You are getting on the more powerful kinds now. You'll find every spell of power has at least one deliberate mistake or mystery in it to prevent accidents. You have to spot those. Now take this spell. So, Howl's a great teacher. Like, he's like, I know that I'm kind of like haphazard with my spells, but he's teaching him how to be careful. Howl is just so good, he doesn't need to be careful anymore. It's like with cooking. When you start out, you follow recipes. You follow, you learn the techniques, you learn how to do it right. And then once you've learned all your basic skills, then you can experiment. Then you can be kind of like, oh, I don't have to use a measuring spoon for my seasonings. I'm just gonna throw it in because I know, like, my heart tells me when it's right.
It's supposed to be. Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, it's kind of like he's telling him use a teaspoon here because it requires like 2 teaspoons, as opposed to Howl, who's just like, yeah, that's 2 teaspoons.
Yeah. So
throwing it into the dish. Yeah.
She thinks of him as a careless person. She thinks the worst of him still. I mean, obviously if he's doing sinister things, but with Michael, he's a very thorough teacher. He wants to make sure that Michael doesn't get hurt. He shows a lot of care and consideration in this teaching moment that I think goes against what Sophie has previously thought about him. And it shows a different side of him because, oh, he spends all of his money, he goes and he seduces the girls, like, he's made to be a very irresponsible person. But then you get the moments where, you know, like, he's teaching him the money thing. He really is a very considerate person. He just doesn't want to be seen that way.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, I loved that scene. Just because, like, it really shows he knows what he's doing. There's a reason the king is seeking him out, because he's good.
Yeah.
He just chooses to be a little shit.
And that's exactly why he's also trying to not be good for the king, because he's like, he doesn't want him to be. He just wants to live his life.
Exactly. Listening to Michael's halting replies to Howl's questions and watching Howl scribble remarks on the paper with a strange, everlasting quill pen, Sophie realized that she could learn a lot too. It dawned on her that if Martha could discover the spell to swap herself and Letty about at Mrs. Fairfax's, then she ought to be able to do the same here. With a bit of luck, there might be no need to rely on Calcifer. So now she's like, well, if I just sit here and listen to them, maybe I can learn some of this magic. And then, of course...
Did she actually kind of learn stuff, or was it just nothing that was actually helpful?
So she just
put through stuff.
She goes up to the bench, and she's, like, hoping that it'll be, like, just, like, detailed, just written out. And then I've never seen such writing, she grumbled to the human skull. Does he use a pen or a poker? So she doesn't understand anything that she's reading.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like, because she hasn't studied magic. She's, like, as far as she knows, she's a totally normal person. But, like, she doesn't understand the what she's seeing on the workbench. Michael understands it, and Howl understands it. Well, Michael kind of does, because he's the apprentice.
Michael's learning it. Yeah,
but,
he's starting to understand it.
Let's see. But yeah, she couldn't understand
she didn't actually understand it, yeah.
No. Let's see. Okay, so now... He was only an hour in the bathroom the next morning. He seemed not to be able to contain himself while Michael put on his best plum velvet suit, ready to go to the palace in Kingsbury, and the two of them wrapped the bulky spell up in gold paper. So this is the spell that the Kingsman commissioned from him. So he is making Michael take it to the castle because he doesn't want to have an audience with the king. He's like, nah, you can't trick me. So yeah, he's sending Michael to the castle to deal with it for him. Let's see. Yeah, and so he's telling...
Sure, like, getting the next...
Yeah, they're expecting it, Howl said. You should only have to wait most of the morning. Tell them a child could work it, show them, and then when you come back, I'll have a spell of power for you to get to work on. So long. So, he just leaves. He's just like, meh. Let's see. My feet itch, he said suddenly. Okay, so Michael left. He shut the door on Michael. My feet itch, he said suddenly. I'm going for a walk on the hills. Tell Michael the spell I promised him is on the workbench. And here's for you to keep busy with. So, he gives her another one of his suits. Let's see. Sophie found a gray and scarlet suit, as fancy as the blue and silver one, dropped into her lap from nowhere. So he just, like, magically drops this in her lap. Howl, meanwhile, picked up his guitar from its corner, turned the knob green down, and stepped out amongst the scuttling heather above Market Chipping. His feet itch, grumbled Calcifer. There's a fog down in Port Haven. Calcifer was low amongst his logs, moving uneasily this way and that to avoid the drips in the chimney. So it's raining in Port Haven, or a fog at least, and so the condensation's like dripping on him. How does he think I feel stuck in a damp grate like this? Then you'll have to give me a hint at least about how to break your contracts, Sophie said, shaking out the gray and scarlet suit. Goodness, you're a fine suit, even if you are a bit worn. Built to pull in the girls, aren't you? I have given you a hint, Calcifer fizzled. So that's the thing. He's like, but I have!
Yeah, and see, that's for him, like, what is the hint, though? I want to know.
Exactly, and it's so well placed that when I read that, I went back to the next chapter, to the last chapter, and was like, oh.
So it was a hint in the last chapter?
Yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't...
That Calcifer had said?
You're trying to get me to give it to you, and I'm not going to.
There's no way I'm going to know what it is. There's just absolutely no way.
It is something that Calcifer said. But you wouldn't know it at all unless you knew what was happening.
What to look for. Yeah. No, it makes sense. It's just like, oh, it's bothering me because I really want to know.
Then you'll have to give it to me again. I didn't catch it, Sophie said as she laid the suit down and hobbled to the door. If I give you a hint and tell you it's a hint, it will be information, and I'm not allowed to do that. It's so funny, because, like, there's so many rules, and he's, like, so just exhausted. He's like, I told you.
But honestly, fair on her part, because, like, if we're not gonna pick it up the first time around, how is she supposed to?
I think also, like I said, because it's said in a way that's just nonchalant, and you're not meant to really focus on it, but really Sophie should have been, like, hanging on every word that Calcifer said. Because Calcifer was like, I'll give you hints, but she didn't know, and she wasn't really paying attention to what he was saying when he said it.
Yeah. I also, with the suit, because I know this will come up later as well, but, like, how she talked to the hats before.
Yes.
And now she's talked to the suit this way. I know that Howl says something else about it later.
Yes.
But saying that just, like, it's a fine suit. So again, I feel like she's done something to it with magic.
Yep, built to pull in the girls.
Yep.
So she's putting this on this suit. And she doesn't know what she's doing.
Nope.
But it's there. Okay, and then Sophie gets too curious, and she goes and she turns the knob black side down because she's not supposed to. See? And this is why Howl had to do what he did with the room.
Which is fair.
Because Sophie doesn't listen.
And I mean, is it this part? Yeah, no, it is this part right after this as well. With the one room, but then she also goes, right, to try to go upstairs again to her room anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But Calcifer is the one saying, no, it's locked.
Yeah. So, yeah, when she turns the black blob down, then she opened the door. There was nothing outside. It was neither black, nor gray, nor white. It was not thick or transparent. It did not move. It had no smell, no feel. When Sophie put a very cautious finger into it, it was neither hot nor cold. It felt of nothing. It seemed utter and complete nothing. What is this? She asked Calcifer. Calcifer was as interested as Sophie. His blue face was leaning right out of the grate to see the door. He had forgotten the fog. I don't know, he whispered. I only maintain it. All I know is that it's on the side of the castle that no one can walk around. It feels quite far away. So there's this it's Howl's personal, like, blot. But it has no, it is nothingness.
There's just nothing.
Like, it is just complete nothingness. So why would a person as vain and materialistic as Howl obviously likes his stuff.
Yeah.
So why would his personal area be a void?
A good point. I didn't even think about.
Yeah, so why would someone as bright and vibrant as Howl have his personal, like, no-go zone be a complete black void?
Now that's another question that I have that I want to know.
Dun dun dun. And the fact that Calcifer doesn't even know what it is. Yeah. So she shut the door.
Curious thing, because Calcifer like has access to everything. He knows all the doors and everything. Like he is the castle basically.
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that even he doesn't know, now I want to know.
So Calcifer just maintains this portal, but he doesn't know what's beyond the portal. He's just like, I just made the door, I don't know what's behind it.
Yeah.
So she shuts the door, turns the knob green side down. She hesitated a minute and then started to hobble up to the stairs. He's locked it, said Calcifer. He told me to tell you if you tried to snoop again. So they knew that Sophie wouldn't stop. Oh,
I mean,
Sophie.
honestly, I'd want to snoop too.
Oh yeah. What has he got up there? I have no idea, said Calcifer. I don't know anything about upstairs. If you only knew how frustrating it is. I can't even really see outside the castle. So he knows, like, when people knock on stuff because he maintains those portals, but there's not a whole lot he can tell about the outside world.
Like, I don't think that he can entirely see, like, outside, right? Like, it's more that he can just see in the room, and he runs the castle, but he's not, like, seeing necessarily outside of it. He's just kind of...
He's made the connections, so those magic portals, but the specifics, and, like, it's interesting when he's steering the castle.
Yeah.
Because he's going off of, like, a knowledge of what's kind of outside, so that part's a little strange given what we know.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sophie, feeling equally frustrated, sat down and began mending the gray and scarlet suit. Michael came in Michael came in quite soon after that. The king saw me at once, he said. He looked around the room. His eyes went to the empty corner where the guitar usually stood. Oh no, he said. Not the lady friend again. I thought she had fallen in love with him and it was all over days ago. What's keeping her? Calcifer fizzed wickedly. You got the signs wrong. Heartless Howl is finding this lady rather tough. He decided to leave her alone a few days to see if that would help. That's all. So the only reason Howl was in the castle was because he was trying to make the girl, like, want him around. And obviously Calcifer's just having a fun time with this. He's like, he's chasing this girl. So yeah, no, Michael was like hoping that it was all over and done with, but nope, there's still more to it. Let's see. Yeah, bother, said
This is him just like... Oh, go ahead.
It's... Bother, said Michael. That was bound to mean trouble. And here I was, hoping Howl was almost sensible again.
Yeah, they're just so sick of the girl. Like, I know that's what the next part goes into talk about, too, with, like... He's just, like... Some of them come over and they cry, some of them come over and... They, the ants or whatever are terrible.
Oh, yeah.
They're just, like, causing problems. People are yelling at us. It's all awful.
Yeah, because...
And even Calcifer's, like, describing them, too, with, like, he said that I hate the unhappy ones. They drip on me. I'd rather have them angry, like...
Oh, yeah. Like, they're just so mad that they have to deal with the aftermath. So when all these women come and they're just like, oh, where's Howl? And they're just like, gosh dang it, another one. They just don't like having
so over it.
Oh, completely. They're just like, can we not? Oh, I love this part. How can both of you talk like that about such utter wickedness? At least, I suppose, I can't blame Calcifer since he's an evil demon. But you, Michael, I don't think I'm evil, Calcifer protested. She's like, well, Calcifer's an evil demon. I don't think I'm evil.
I love that. I love Calcifer's little remarks.
Oh, yeah.
They're so good.
Oh, yeah. And it's so funny because Sophie's still of the mindset, like, oh, yeah, like, he's eating their hearts and, like, practically, like, murdering them.
Yeah.
And Calcifer just says, Howl's very fickle. He's only interested until the girl falls in love with him. Then he can't be bothered with her. So they explain here, like, what's going on. Like, he's just wooing them as a game until they fall in love with him, and then he's like, nope, peace out.
Yep. And that's where it finally explains that he's not eating their hearts, and she can get over this idea of him eating their hearts.
Oh, yeah. And then, so Calcifer talks about them tracking him down. You'd think he'd have the sense to give them a false name, Sophie said scornfully. The scorn was to hide the fact that she was feeling somewhat foolish. So she's feeling foolish because this whole time she bought into the idea that he was, like, killing these girls and eating their hearts, and now she's like, oh, it was a metaphor. Because that's how the ants described it. So when the angry ants would come and, like, my niece, Howl, like, completely stole her heart, and so it's all a metaphor. It wasn't literal. Wonderful. It's so funny. And so now Sophie's feeling embarrassed. Oh, he always does, Michael said. He loves giving false names and posing as things. He does it even when he's not courting girls. Haven't you noticed that he's Sorcerer Jenkins in Port Haven and Wizard Pendragon in Kingsbury, as well as Horrible Howl in the castle? So he likes to have false identities. So that's why in Port Haven they were like, oh, the sorcerer, because he goes by Sorcerer Jenkins.
Which, okay, with that one, I did find interesting. So, like, he's got all the different names. Is his name actually Howl?
Yes.
Okay. I had to ask, because if he's using all false names everywhere. But then with him saying that, like, Horrible Howl in the castle, and the fact that Michael's saying that, referring to what we were talking about earlier, with, like, whenever he was referencing, to himself, what was she calling him? Oh my gosh, I have to flip back a few pages. Not even a few. I have to flip back to, like, the first chapter that we were on. What was it, chapter 5? Or 4?
No, it was 4.
I don't know if I can find this page to remember what I was going to talk about.
I think the whole Horrible Howl, I think that's mostly, like... Oh, thank you. I think that's mostly, Sophie calling him that. Oh!
But then Michael's the one saying it.
But, I mean, that's all Sophie's called Howl since she got in the castle was horrible.
True.
And she's calling him wicked and awful. And, okay, so the whole... Let's see. Horrible Howl in the castle. Sophie had not noticed, which made her feel more foolish still. And feeling foolish made her angry. Well, I still think it's wicked, going around and making poor girls unhappy. It's heartless and pointless. He's made that way, Calcifer said. Michael... So, okay. Let's see. So then Sophie talked about how she feels foolish. So you ate hearts, did you, Suit? Why do ants put things so oddly when they talk about their nieces? Probably fancied you themselves, my good Suit. So she's like, she's avoiding talking to Michael, but... It's like when you're talking to your pet about a real thing. Like, you don't want to talk to the person you're with, but you'll tell the pet. Like, sometimes when I'm mad at my husband. And I'm like, do you hear that, Kidder Beans? Do you hear that nonsense? I'm not talking to him, but I'm talking to him through... So she's talking to the Suit. And this is when she realizes, like, it was all a metaphor. And then she's just like, aww. Like, she's mad now because she got fooled.
Honestly, fair though.
And I don't know if it's here, but do you remember how I think they mentioned in one of the first chapters about blackening his name?
don't remember.
Okay, so essentially the reason that Sophie believes all these things is because that's what she heard in her hometown in Market
Isn't that
Shipping.
what, like, a rumor, though, that Michael... Yeah,
It
I think...
was!
Okay, no, I do remember that. It was the rumor that Michael was spreading around.
Yes!
I don't know where that's at, but yeah.
But yeah, so that was the thing. Michael is the one who put out the rumors because Howl told him to. So it was all fake. The whole Howl being evil and horrible. It's fake. And Howl's the one who did it.
Howl... Honestly, why in that town did they decide to? Did it say?
Okay, so it was in Market Shipping specifically because that's where the castle is in the marshes above Market Shipping. He wanted people to leave him alone. And so he's like, if I spread horrible, awful rumors, and it did get brought up about, like, at this stage in my career, I have to prove my wickedness and whatnot. So he had Michael spread these rumors so that people would leave him alone and think that he's evil. It was all a ploy.
I love it. It was so great.
So now, Sophie doesn't know what to think because everything's been completely upended. Let's see.
I think Howl had gone back and he had gone into the bathroom.
Yep.
Of course. He's gotta, like, do his hair.
Sophie, have you tidied up the shelf of spells in here by any chance? Sophie felt more foolish than ever. Nothing would have possessed her to admit that she had gone through all those packets and jars looking for pieces of girl. I haven't touched a thing, she replied virtuously as she went to get the frying pan. I hope you didn't, Michael said uneasily at the bathroom doors, or as the bathroom door slammed. Sophie is so embarrassed by everything now. She's like, I would rather die.
I love it.
Oh, it's like she would rather die than admit that she was foolish in the least. Like, she's so embarrassed by everything, so she's like, nope. Didn't
At least she's like getting embarrassed, you know what I mean? At least she's like, she's not as like careless about it as she was whenever she was first turned into an old woman.
Yeah.
She's much more like getting mindful of it again now.
Yep, so let's see. I think he's tinting his hair. I hope you looked.
Yeah, he was tinting his hair.
Yeah. Let's see. Calcifer said from under the pan. He's using a lot of hot water, Calcifer said from under the pan. I think he's tinting his hair. I hope you left the hair spells alone. For a plain man with mud-colored hair, he's terribly vain about his looks. So, that's funny, because Calcifer describes, like, just gives this, like, plain Jane description, but the whole time, Sophie describes him as, like, sort of, like, magnificent, like, he's handsome, like, she goes into, like, a great lengths about, like, his eyes and his hair, and then you get a dude response from Calcifer. He's like, he's a dude, he's got hair. And so, Sophie obviously, like, takes the time to notice all these things about Howl. Let's see. Oh, shut up, snapped Sophie. I put everything back just where I found it. She was so cross that she emptied the pan of eggs and bacon over Calcifer. Calcifer, of course, ate them with enormous enthusiasm and much flaring and gobbling. So she's taking out her anger on Calcifer, but of course it backfires because he's like, yeah, eggs and bacon! Oh, and then this is the
best.
Great part. Yes. They were clearing away when Calcifer was running his blue tongue round his purple lips when the bathroom door crashed open and Howl shot out, wailing with despair. Look at this, he shouted. Look at it! What has that one-woman force of chaos done to these spells? Sophie and Michael whirled round and looked at Howl. His hair was wet, but apart from that, neither of them could see that it looked any different. If you mean me, Sophie began. I do mean you! Look, Howl shrieked. He sat down with a thump on the three-legged stool and jabbed at his wet head with his finger. Look! Survey! Inspect! My hair is ruined! I look like a pan of bacon and eggs! He He's so dramatic. They can't even spot a difference. And he's just like, it's the end of the world.
It's the end. Everything's over.
Yep. Michael and Sophie bent nervously over Howl's head. It seemed the usual flaxen color right to the roots. The only difference might have been a slight, very slight, trace of red. Sophie found that agreeable. It reminded her a little of the color her own hair should have been. I think it's very nice, she said. Nice! Screamed Howl. You would! You did it on purpose! You couldn't rest until you made me miserable too! Look at it! It's Ginger! I shall have to hide until it's grown out. He spread his arms out passionately. Despair! He yelled. Anguish! Horror!
He's so dramatic.
I laughed so hard while reading this. He's such a boy.
He was just so good.
Oh my gosh, it is hilarious. Like, it's just a slightly different shade. And Sophie's like, I think it looks nice. And he's just like, moan, agony.
The end of the world.
Oh, and this part, oh my gosh. So, okay. Not only is he, like, vocal about it, but then you get this. The room turned dim. Huge, cloudy, human-looking shapes bellied up in all four corners and advanced on Sophie and Michael, howling as they came. The howls began as moaning horror and went up to despairing brays, and then up again to screams of pain and terror. Sophie pressed her hand to her ears, but the screams pressed through her hands, louder and louder still, more horrible every second. Calcifer shrank hurriedly down into the grate and flicked his way under his lowest log. Michael grabbed Sophie by her elbow and dragged her to the door. He spun the knob to blue down and kicked the door open and got both of them out into the streets in Port Haven as fast as he could. like not only is he like moaning and complaining about it, but like magically something's happening. Like,
yeah,
Howl having negative emotions seems to be a very bad thing. So,
which honestly kind of would make sense why he would try to avoid
any
negative things.
Because like when he's in the depths of despair, obviously like things start to happen, and it's scary. Like when you really, I'm like, oh, like that's really kind of scary.
And the fact that not even just like in the castle, but out in Port Haven, it was affecting like the people out there, because you know all the people were running with their hands over their ears. They're all like freaking out.
Oh yeah,
because of the sounds that are coming from it and whatnot. Like,
I love this. Ought we to leave him alone in that state? Sophie quavered. Yes, said Michael. If he thinks it's your fault, then definitely. They hurried through the town, pursued by throbbing screams. Quite a crowd came with them, in spite of the fact that the fog had now become a seeping sea drizzle. Everyone made for the harbor or the sand, where the noise seemed easier to bear. Like, he is having some issues.
He's having a meltdown. He's having a straight-up meltdown.
Everyone stood in damp huddles, looking out at the misty white horizon and the dripping ropes on the moored ships, while the noise became a gigantic, heartbroken sobbing. Sophie reflected that she was seeing the sea close for the first time in her life. It was a pity that she was not enjoying it more. The sobs died away to a vast, miserable sighs, and then to silence. People began cautiously to go back into town. Some of them came timidly up to Sophie. Is something wrong with the poor sorcerer, Mrs. Witch? He's a little unhappy today, Michael said. Come on, I think we can risk going back now. So, like, everyone's like...
Excuse. He's a little unhappy.
Yeah, he's a little unhappy today.
He just made it seem like the entire world was going to end, but he's just a little unhappy.
It's just a little tantrum. So they go back. This is, like, the craziest thing. Michael opened the shabby little door rather cautiously. Inside, Howl was still sitting on the stool. He sat in an attitude of utter despair, and he was covered all over in thick green slime. There were horrendous, dramatic, violent quantities of green slime. Oodles of it. It covered Howl completely. It draped his head and his shoulders in sticky dollops, heaping on his knees and hands, trickling into glops down his legs, and then dripping off the stool in sticky strands. It was in oozing ponds and crawling pools over most of the floor. Long fingers of it crept into the hearth. It smelled vile. "Save me!" Calcifer cried in a hoarse whisper. He was down to 2 desperately flickering small flames. "The stuff is going to put me out!" Sophie held up her skirt and marched as near to Howl as she could get, which was not very near. "Stop it," she said. "Stop it at once! You're behaving just like a baby!"
I love that.
Howl did not move or answer. His face stared from beneath the slime, white and tragic and wide-eyed. "What shall we do? Is he dead?" Michael asked, jittering behind the door. Michael was a nice boy, Sophie thought, but a bit helpless in a crisis. "No, of course he isn't," she said. "And if it wasn't for Calcifer, he could behave like a jellied eel all day for all I care. Open the bathroom door." So, like, okay, not only did we get, him, like, "Oh, the world everything's over." So not only did we get that, and then we got the shrieking and the screams and the weird, creepy shadow people, but now we have slime. Like, negative emotions are really, really bad for Howl.
Just a little.
Just a wee bit. So then, they haul him into the bathroom, and they, like, throw him in the hot water in the tub. And, like, what is it? So then Sophie leaves Michael to start, like, cleaning up. And then she starts cleaning the slime. And she actually has the ingenious idea. She opens the door to the swamps, and then she just starts pushing the slime out into the swamp.
Which, honestly, 10 out of 10.
Oh, yeah.
Great
And then
idea.
I like how it describes... The castle left a trail like a snail in the heather, but it was an easy way to get rid of the slime. There were some advantages to living in a moving castle, Sophie thought as she washed the floor. She wondered if Howl's noises had been coming from the castle too, in which she pitied the folks of market shipping. So, even though the door was at Port Haven, she's like, I wonder if they could hear it all the way over there.
Probably.
She knew the green slime was Howl's revenge on her. She was not at all prepared to be sympathetic when Michael finally led Howl forth from the bathroom, clothed in gray and scarlet, and sat him tenderly in the chair by the hearth. So now they're, like, having to take care of Howl.
Needed to.
Let's see.
Howl just throwing a fit.
Okay, let's see. That was plain
Howl just kind of sat there and... Oh, go ahead.
that was plain stupid, Calcifer sputtered. Were you trying to get rid of the best part of your magic or something? Howl took no notice. He just sat and looking tragic and shivering.
Were you trying to get rid of the best part of your magic or something? Is that in reference to himself, like to Calcifer?
Yes.
I just want to know more about their relationship, man.
Dun, dun, dun. I can't get him to speak, Michael whispered miserably. It's just a tantrum, Sophie said. Martha and Letty were good at having tantrums too. She knew how to deal with those. On the other hand, it's quite a risk to spank a wizard for getting hysterical about his hair. So now she's trying to figure out what to do with them, because she's like, well, if they were my sisters, I would just spank them, but, can't.
She was nice, and she made him a warm drink and everything, told him to drink it, you know, and then tried to talk to him, and I'm surprised, like, he actually ended up talking to her, too.
Yeah.
right? After the drink and everything, and her being like, is it about the young lady you keep going to see? And he actually,
So yes.
you know, yes, talked about it, and everything is so cute.
I left her alone to see if that would make her remember me fondly, and it hasn't. She wasn't sure, even when I last saw her. Now she tells me there's another fellow. He sounded so miserable that Sophie felt quite sorry for him. Now his hair was dry. She noticed guiltily it was really almost pink. So, yeah, she dyed her hair. She is the most beautiful girl there ever was in these parts, Howl went on mournfully. I love her so dearly, but she scorns my deep devotion and gets sorry for another fellow. How can she have another fellow after all the attention I've given her? They usually get rid of the other fellows as soon as I come along. Sophie's sympathy shrank quite sharply. It occurred to her that if Howl couldn't cover himself with green slime, or if Howl could cover himself with green slime so easily, then he could just as easily turn his hair the proper color. So she's like, oh, like she actually kind of feels bad, then she feels guilty that his hair is pink, and then as soon as he starts like talking about pretty much how much of a playboy he is, she's just like, nah, he can fix his own damn problems. And then, so this is interesting. Then why don't you feed the girl a love potion and get it over with, she said. Oh no, said Howl, that's not playing the game. That would spoil all the fun. So he thinks it's fun to, like, woo these girls, get them to fall in love with him, and then just leave them.
Which is so messed up.
Oh,
on
yeah.
So many different levels.
But as messed up as the game is, he's playing it fairly because he's not going to drug them.
Yeah. At the very least, at least he won't drug them.
Yep. Don't you ever give a thought for the poor girl? She snapped. Howl finished the milk and gazed into the mug with a sentimental smile. I think of her all the time. Lovely, lovely Letty Hatter. Sophie's sympathy went for good with a sharp bang. A good deal of anxiety took its place. Oh, Martha, she thought, you have been so busy. So it wasn't anyone in society you were talking about. So now she's like...
I read that, I literally gasped. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
She's like, oh, shit! So at this point, she thinks it's the girl in her sister in the bakery, who is pretending to be Letty, but is really Martha.
It's really Martha, yeah.
So that's what she thinks is happening.
Yeah.
So it's like, dun, dun, dun! The girl he's been wooing this whole time that Sophie's been with him was her sister! And then we get to chapter 7, in which a scarecrow prevents Sophie from leaving the castle. So, this was really funny, because she's, like, terrified of the scarecrow.
Yes, I loved it.
So, she decides that she is going to tell Martha exactly how to get rid of Howl. Like, just say that you're in love with him, he'll go away, he'll leave you alone, you don't want anything to do with him, he probably gave you a fake name, it's really the wizard Howl, don't do it. But then, she decides to go, because Howl, let's see. Howl, of course, came out of the bathroom before she reached it. Sophie looked at him sourly. He was all spruce and dashing, scented gently with apple blossom, another flower. The sunlight from the window dazed off his gray and scarlet suit and made a faintly pink halo of his hair. I think my hair looks rather good this color, he said. Do you indeed, grumbled Sophie. It goes with this suit. You have quite the touch with the needle, don't you? You've given the suit more style somehow. Huh, said Sophie.
Okay, see, that was the part that made me think back to, like, whenever she had told the suit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember specifically what it was, just like that it would make the girls and whatnot more stylish and everything like that, make the girls come to him. Yeah. And I think at one point here, I'm trying to see if she said it. I don't know if it was this spot specifically, but I know there was a part where Sophie had said, like, it had made her, I don't know if it made her blush or something, like his smile or something like that, but I feel like that was also in reference to, like, the suit and the magic with that. But it might not be quite this part yet.
It's the next. He smiled sunnily at Sophie and stepped out among the spires of Kingsbury. And do you think that it makes it all right? Sophie growled as the door shut but the smile had mollified her. If that smile works on me, then there's no wonder poor
Yes.
Martha doesn't know her own mind.
And
So,
see, I feel like that is kind of to do with her magic in the suit, not just her.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Let's see. I think this part's interesting. So, right after you've given the suit more style, Howl stopped with his hand on the knob above the door. Aches and pains troubling you, he said? Or has something annoyed you? Annoyed, said Sophie. Why should I be annoyed? Someone only filled the castle with rotten aspic and deafened everyone in Port Haven and scared Calcifer to a cinder and broke a few hundred hearts. Why should that annoy me? Howl laughed. I apologize, he said, turning the knob red down. So,
I love that.
So he's just all...
I love her sarcasm.
Oh, yeah. It's like, of course, why would anyone be angry? You're just a degenerate little, I almost said something I shouldn't have said. Anywho. But she's mad about his behavior, and it's really...
It's justified.
I find it very funny that even after she found out that he's not, killing these girls, she's still mad about the fact that he's wooing them for seemingly no good reason.
But honestly, that's fair. At least she doesn't think that I don't think he's, wicked and evil anymore, but still, it's a messed up thing to do.
It's
you know what I mean?
But she still just has to be mad at him for something. She's just
yeah.
She just needs to be mad at him for the world to go round. Let's see. So then we get to the part of the smile worked on her.
And then Michael sets out, right? Michael starts leaving to go, and she assumes it's to... Or does he say specifically?
No. So, Sophie hobbled to drop another log, because Sophie wants to leave, and so Calcifer says that he needs another log before she goes. So she goes to give him a log, and then she goes to walk out. But here Michael came running downstairs and snatched the remains of a loaf off the bench as he ran to the door. You don't mind, do you? He said in an agitated way. I'll bring a fresh loaf when I come back. I've got something very urgent to see to today, but I'll be back by evening. If the sea captain calls for his wind spell, it's on the end of the bench, clearly labeled. He turned the doorknob green side down and jumped into the windy... That's why... Okay. So that explains it. That's why they had to circle back and go get Michael, because Michael jumped out of the castle into the moors. And so when the Scarecrow was chasing them, Michael still needed to get back into the castle, but the castle was running around. So they had to do a couple laps to go back to the spot to pick up Michael.
So there's no door or anything in... Okay, that makes sense.
No, because the... Market Chipping, where Sophie's from, that's where the castle is. So Michael left directly from the castle and has to go back in through that door. It's not like a shop in Market Chipping, it's the castle itself.
Yeah.
So that's why they had to do a couple rounds to go pick him up.
That makes sense.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, there we go. I was like, because when you said that you had questions about that, I was like, great, did I misread that?
Yeah,
I'm confused now.
I was really confused about it because I know that, the door was working, but I wasn't entirely following with the colors. There's a lot to take in, so...
So yeah, that's what makes sense. So he jumps out, Botheration, said Sophie. Calcifer, how does a person open the door if there's no one inside the castle? So, say Howl, Michael, and Sophie were all gone. How would they get to the door? I'll open it for you. Or Michael. Howl does it himself. So Howl can open the doors, by himself, but, if Sophie needed to get in and there was nobody there, Calcifer would have done it for her. So no one would be locked out when Sophie left. And she's responsible. She made sure that nobody was going to get locked out and that she didn't need to stay to let anybody in. Let's see.
And then he was just she was leaving, or he asked for her to leave the logs where she could reach him, and it shows that he has a hand.
Yeah.
Which was interesting.
He's like, see, I can grab things. And then she's like, you can't burn them until they're in the grate. Don't burn the castle down. So Sophie tries to leave, and somebody knocks. It was one of those days, Sophie thought. It must be the sea captain. She put her hand to turn the knob blue down. No, it's the castle door, but I'm not sure. Then it was Michael back for some reason, Sophie thought as she opened the door. A turnip face leered at her. She smelled mildew. Against the wide blue sky, a ragged arm, ending in the stump of a stick, wheeled around and tried to paw at her. It was a scarecrow. It was only made of sticks and rags, but it was alive, and it was trying to come in. "Calcifer!" Sophie screamed. "Make the castle go faster!" The stone blocks round the doorway crunched and grated. The green-brown moorland was suddenly rushing past. The scarecrow's stick arms thumped on the door, and then went scraping along the wall of the castle as the castle left it behind. It wheeled its other arm around and seemed to clutch at the stonework. It meant to get into the castle if it could. So Sophie's terrified of this scarecrow.
She's terrified of the scarecrow, but I don't understand why is she so terrified of the scarecrow.
See, that's the funny thing.
Okay, she picked this scarecrow up before, like, in the early chapters, right? And she was friendly with it and everything. And now a scarecrow's just, like, at the back door. She's been living with some crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Fire demon, like, all of this, like, wizard's magic and everything. But what scares her, what terrifies her to her core, is a scarecrow.
Like, seriously, like, she's just so utterly terrified. Let's see. Okay. What does the scarecrow do? Is something the matter? Calcifer asked. Yes, my heart. There's a scarecrow at the door, Sophie gasped. What does the scarecrow have to do with your heart? Calcifer asked. It was trying to get in here. It gave me a terrible fright, and my heart. But you wouldn't understand, you silly young demon. You haven't got a heart. Yes, I have, Calcifer said, proudly as he revealed his arm. Down in the glowing part under the logs. And don't you call me young. I'm a good 1,000,000 years older than you are. Can I reduce the speed of the castle now? Only if the scarecrow's gone, said Sophie. Has it? I can't tell, said Calcifer. It's not flesh and blood, you see. I told you I couldn't really see outside. So she's so terrified.
She's so panicked by a scarecrow.
So she opens the door and she sees the scarecrow like off in the distance. And she said, "It's still there, hopping after us. Go faster!" But it upsets all my calculations, Calcifer explained. I was aiming to circle the hills and get back to where Michael left us in time to pick him up this evening. Well, then go twice as fast and circle the hills twice, as long as you leave that horrible thing behind, said Sophie. What a fuss, Calcifer grumbled, but he increased the castle speed. Okay, so he doesn't want to be doing this. He's already, like, planned everything out. He doesn't want to have to, get away from the scarecrow. But yeah. he does it. He does it for Sophie.
Yes.
He's like, fine. Which I found very interesting. So, let's see. So, I mean, obviously, they get away from the scarecrow. Calcifer decides to stop. Let's see. Okay, so stuff is... Huh?
Oh, go ahead.
Stuff has fallen all over. Some of the stuff fell into the bathwater. And so she takes it out and she actually uses the drying power. And, like, she's amazed because it's dried instantly. Let's see. So then she decides to start dinner. She felt cheerful enough to busy herself getting supper. She bundled everything on the bench into a heap around the skull at one end and began chopping onions. At least your eyes don't water, my friend, she told the skull. Count your blessings. So, I loved this part. The door sprang open. Sophie nearly cut herself in fright, thinking it was the scarecrow again. But it was Michael. He burst jubilantly in. He dumped a loaf, a pie, and a pink and white striped box on top of the onions. Then he seized Sophie around her skinny waist and danced her around the room. It's all right! It's all right! He shouted joyfully. Sophie hopped and stumbled to keep out of the way of Michael's boots. Steady! Steady! She gasped, giddily, trying to hold the knife where it would not cut either of them. What is all right? Letty loves me! Michael shouted. So, Letty is in love with Michael, dancing her almost into the bathroom and then almost into the hearth. She's never seen Howl. It was all a mistake. He spun them both around in the middle of the room. Will you let me go before this knife cuts one of us? Sophie squawked, and perhaps explain a little? So that was, like, really interesting. Like, it's like...
It was like just a surprise thrown in.
Like, dun dun dun! Last night I'd wished you dyed his hair blue, he said. I don't mind now. When Howl said Letty Hatter, even I thought of dyeing him blue myself. You can see the way he talks. I knew he was going to drop this girl just like all the others as soon as he got her to fall in love with him. And when I thought it was my Letty, Anyway, you know he said there was a fellow, and I thought it was me, so I tore down to Market Shipping today, and it was all right. Howl must be after another girl with the same name. Letty's never even seen him. Let's get this straight, Sophie said dizzily. We are talking about Letty Hatter, who works in Cesaria's pastry shop, are we? Of course we are, Michael said jubilantly. I've loved her ever since she started work there, and I almost couldn't believe it when she said she loved me. She has hundreds of admirers. I wouldn't have been surprised if Howl was one of them. I'm so relieved. I got a cake from Cesari's to celebrate. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. So, it's Martha who is in love with Michael. So the one who works at the bakery.
Yes. Yeah.
And the really big, like, whoa, is Letty, Martha, has never seen Howl. And it does go on to, they're like, well, how do you know? Maybe he was, like, giving her a fake name. He goes, no, I described him. You know exactly how, like, unique he is. I described him to a T, and she's never seen the man in her life.
Like, totally making it out that, like, yeah, it is not the same Letty, however.
Yeah, like, but he really made sure. He's like,
Really
I'm gonna describe Howl. I'm gonna give some of the fake names. Like, have you met this man? And she's like, no. And he's like, yes. So that means that it's the Letty who is the witch's apprentice that Howl is courting. So both of her sisters are actively being courted by one of these men.
Such a crazy, like, all of it was first, like, shocking with, just knowing that Howl's after Letty in the first place, but then, like, Michael's there with Martha, who's Letty, but then the other Letty possibly might be with Howl, like...
Yep.
So much happened in this, like, one chapter.
So then, because Michael, he brings up, she's like, are you sure your Letty was telling the truth about Howl? Positive, said Michael. I know when she's lying. She stops twiddling her thumbs. She does too, said Sophie, chuckling. How do you know? Michael asked in surprise. Because she's my sister's granddaughter, said Sophie. And so she lies, and she's like, yeah, she's a relative. That's how I know her. And so that just, Michael knows her well enough to know, like, her tells and everything.
At this part here, I kind of wish she would have been honest with it, like, oh yeah, she's my sister, because again, then she could be like, hey Michael, clearly something's wrong. I'm old, there's a problem, and she's my sister.
Right?
Like, Michael could be like, oh hey, maybe you have a curse, like, but no, instead she lies.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why she gotta lie about it?
Yeah. No, I think she's still curious about Howl, and she doesn't want to move things too fast, and she can't directly answer questions about being cursed.
She can't answer questions about being cursed, but she can, like, she's talking to a wizard's apprentice right now. I think that, like, she could get him to understand pretty easily.
Also, another thing I just thought of, Calcifer knows that she's under a spell. He could tell them, but he doesn't.
You know what? That's a really good point, too. But he's not telling them because he wants, jargon. So
Yeah.
it makes sense why he's not telling them. Because he wants out of this bargain that he's in with Howl. So.
Yeah. So then they're like, let's see.
Then they start talking about the cake, and Howl is so impressed with the cake. I thought that was a little funny. How he was just like, ooh, cake.
Let's see. As Sophie started opening the box, it dawned on her that Michael had gone from seeing her as a natural disaster to actually liking her. She was so pleased and grateful that she decided to tell Michael the whole truth about Letty and Martha and herself, too. It was only fair to let him know what sort of family he meant to marry into. The box came open. It was Cesari's most luscious cake, covered in cream and cherries with little curls of chocolate. "Oh," said Sophie. The square knob over the door clicked down to a red blob of its own accord, and Howl came in. "What a marvelous cake, my favorite kind," he said. "Where did you get it?" I called in at Cesari's," Michael said, in a sheepish, self-conscious way. Michael looked up at Howl. Something was always interrupting her when she decided to say she was under a spell. Even a wizard, it seemed. So she was going to tell him.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, she was straight up going to tell him, like, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, but then Howl came in.
But she doesn't want to tell Howl. Why doesn't she want to tell Howl? Didn't she go into the castle thinking the wizard can break the spell?
She did, but then she made the deal with Calcifer, and now she's been living there. So I think at this point, A, she can't say that she's under a spell, but B, I think she's worried that Howl would be mad at her for being there under false pretenses and trying to use him.
True, and she probably wants to be able to still continue living there,
Yeah.
so... Makes sense.
Let's see.
Then I know that he starts to get mad about, Calcifer here. Right, because Calcifer is asleep, because she ran him around for being scared of the scarecrow.
So is something the matter? Michael asked. He seemed to know the signs. "There is," said Howl. "I shall have to find someone to blacken my name to the king." "Was there something wrong with the wagon spell?" said Michael. "No, it worked perfectly. That's the trouble," Howl said, restlessly twiddling an onion ring in one finger. "The king's trying to pin me down to something else now. Calcifer, if we're not very careful, he's going to appoint me royal magician." Calcifer did not answer. Howl roved back to the fireside and realized Calcifer was asleep. "Wake him up, Michael. I need to consult him." Michael threw 2 logs on Calcifer and called him. Nothing happened. Apart from a thin spire of smoke. "Calcifer!" Howl shouted. That did no good either. Howl gave Michael a mystified look and picked up a poker, which was something Sophie had never seen him do before. "Sorry, Calcifer," he said, jabbing under the unburned logs. "Wake up." One thick black cloud of smoke rolled up and stopped. "Go away," Calcifer grumbled. "I'm tired." At this, Howl looked thoroughly alarmed. "What's wrong with him? I've never known him like this before." "I think it was the scarecrow," Sophie said. Howl swiveled around on his knees and leveled his glass marble eyes at her. "What have you done now?" I love how he just knows. He's like, "What did you do?" He went on...
Also the reference again. Just the reference to the glass marble eyes. Like, every single time. Glass eyes. Like, it's something, man.
Yeah. Let's see. "A scarecrow," he said. Because she explained it. "A scarecrow," he said. "Calcifer agreed to speed up the castle because of a scarecrow. Dear Sophie, do please tell me how you bully a fire demon into being that obliging. I dearly love to know." "I didn't bully him," said Sophie. "It gave me a turn, and he was sorry for me." "It gave her a turn, and Calcifer was sorry for her," Howl repeated. "My good Sophie, Calcifer is never sorry for anyone. Anyway, I hope you enjoy raw onions and cold pie for your supper, because you've almost put Calcifer out." "There's the cake," Michael said, trying to make peace.
I love Michael just trying to, like, chime in, like, "It's fine, there's cake."
But it's so interesting that, like, he's so bewildered at the fact that Calcifer did something nice for Sophie, and that he listened to her. Like, it's just absolutely bewildering for them to be like...
He's so appalled by it.
Yeah. Let's see. So they're talking about... Okay, so this is kind of interesting. Michael risked asking what the king had wanted. Nothing definite yet, Howl said gloomily. But he was sounding me out about his brother, quite ominously. Apparently they had a good old argument before Prince Justin stormed off and people were talking. The king obviously wanted me to volunteer to look for his brother, and like a fool, I went and said I didn't think Wizard Suleiman was dead, and that made matters worse. Why did you want to slither out of looking for the prince? Sophie demanded. Don't you think you can find him? Rude as well as a bully, aren't you? Howl said. He still had not forgiven her about Calcifer. I want you to get out of it because I know I can find him. If you must know, Justin was great buddies with Suleiman, and the argument was because he told the king he was going to look for him. He didn't think the king should have sent Suleiman to the waste in the first place. Now, even you must know there's a certain lady in the waste who is very bad news. She promised to fry me alive last year, and she sent a curse out after me, and I've avoided it so far because I had sense to give her a false name. So, he got entangled with the Witch of the Waste. And obviously...
But, like, the fact that he said, now even you must know there's a certain lady in the waste who's very bad news, I mean... I don't know if he's just implying that with, like, it being... you know, oh, just because you're from the area you should know this, or if it's something a little bit more than that, you know what I mean?
See, that's kind of what I thought at first, was that, I'm like, it has to be... because she's from the area. Like, everyone knows the Witch of the Waste. Everyone talks about the Witch of the Waste. There could be a little something more to it.
I feel like there should be, like, I don't know, it just feels like there might be something more to it. Like, he might kind of know something going on with it, you know what I mean?
Dun dun dun. And so he gave the witch a fake name. So it was probably either like the Wizard Jenkins or Sorcerer Jenkins or the Wizard Pendragon. Mm-hmm. So she's got a fake name, but she's still looking for him. Sophie was almost awed. You mean you jilted the Witch of the Waste? That is not the way to put it. I admit I thought I was fond of her for a time. She is, in some ways, a very sad lady, very unloved. Every man in Ingery is scared stiff of her. You ought to know how that feels, Sophie dear. Sophie's mouth opened in utter indignation. Michael said quickly, do you think we should move the castle? That's why you invented it, wasn't it? So he's like, Michael's trying to defuse his angry parents.
But again, bro, just, like, the fact that he's saying, like, you ought to know how that feels, and it's, like, italicized for the people who can't see it. Like, the you is italicized. Like, he definitely knows something with her going on.
I think...
like, he has to.
There's, like, such a double meaning behind this whole conversation, because he could be meaning that, like, Sophie's mean and cantankerous and, like, she would be, like, unloved. But it could definitely also mean that he knows that she's got some entanglement with the Witch of the Waste.
Yeah.
There's a duality to these conversations that they're having.
That's exactly how it feels.
And Michael has gone from, like, being upset about Sophie to now he's like, don't fight, Mom and Dad! Let's see. That depends on Calcifer. Howl looked over his shoulder at the barely smoking logs again. I must say, if I think the king and the witch of both... if I think of the king and the witch both after me, I get a craving for planting the castle on a nice, frowning rock 1,000 miles away. Michael obviously wished he had not spoken. Sophie could see he was thinking about 1,000 miles... thinking that 1,000 miles was a terribly long away from Martha. But what happens to your Letty Hatter, she said to Howl, if you up and move. So, she sees Michael being upset about the thought of being so far away. So she takes it upon herself to be like, but what about the girl you're pursuing? Knowing he has this, like, obsessive, like, drive to woo them. So she's trying to be a wingman for Michael. I expect that will be all over by then, Howl said absently. But if I could only think of a way to get the king off my back. I know. He lifted his fork with a melting hunk of cream and cake on it and pointed it at Sophie. You can blacken my name to the king. You can pretend to be my old mother and plead for your blue-eyed boy. She gave Sophie a smile, which no doubt charmed the Witch of the Waste, and possibly Letty too. Firing it along the fork, across the cream, straight into Sophie's eyes, dazzlingly. If you can bully Calcifer, the king should give you no trouble at all.
I love that. He's just like, yeah, this is your problem now.
Yeah, he's like, but
solve it.
you!
If you can bully the fire demon, you can get the king off my back.
Yep. And I love how, like, beforehand she's like, oh no, like, Howl's terrible, awful, and now she's like, but his smile. And the question begs, so if he's wearing that suit, is Sophie immune to her own magic, and is this her falling for him, or is it just the magic?
That's a great question.
Now you have to
I
wonder.
feel like part of it, I feel like part of it is the magic. Because, like, I don't know, there was no speaking of her, like, falling for him really before much.
But that's the thing,
And
now
it
that
was,
she's
like,
gotten
right
to know
after
him.
the suit happen. True.
So,
I don't know, I feel like more of that's going to unfold with, like, future chapters too and stuff.
and I love this part. Sophie stared through the dazzle and said nothing. This, she thought, was where she slithered out. She was leaving. It was too bad about Calcifer's contract. She had had enough of Howl. First green slime, then glaring at her for something Calcifer had done quite freely, and now this? Tomorrow she would slip off to upper folding and tell Letty all about it. So, she always gets mad that he's slithering out of things, and she's like, oh, that's my cue to leave. So
at least she's hopefully going to go and tell Letty too.
Yeah,
about it all.
That's kind of her plan. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna tell Letty everything. Hopefully, she's not gonna fall for Howl. Yep. You know, she's got all of this nonsense going on, but it's so funny that she describes it as she describes Howl of slithering out. She's like, now it's my turn.
Yep.
I just love their interactions.
Same. I love, honestly, all of the characters' interactions are fantastic.
I think,
especially with how they're like growing together with each other more and more.
In these 4 chapters, we have definitely seen a lot of character development. We've seen
a ton.
We've definitely seen a lot more of their like personalities come out. And I love it.
Same.
I like that Sophie now realizes that there was a lot more to Howl than she was seeing initially. And that he really is a very complex character. She thought she had him pegged in the beginning. Oh, horribly careless man. Like, he's evil. He's wicked. And then she just kind of was like, oh, he's kind of a jerk. But now you see, like, he does good.
Yeah.
Like, and he is a thoughtful and caring person.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't want anybody knowing that about himself.
Which makes you partially wonder why. I mean, he just wants to be left alone. That's really why, I think, is what it comes down to. But then again, why does he want to be alone so badly?
Well, and I mean, he pissed off the Witch of the Waste, so now the witch is after him.
That too. The witch is after him, the king is after him, and he's just trying to avoid all of them.
Yep. He's like,
poor guy.
Her responsibilities can't catch me. But
I'm looking forward to the next chapters, though.
Oh, I know, right? Okay, so next, Volume 3 will be chapters 8, 9, 10, and 11.
8, 9, 10. Yes. Wait, will it be just 8, 9, 10, and 11?
Yeah, because it's 4 weeks.
The first 1, 2, 3, 4. So wait, is our next stream going to be the 29th or the 5th?
Oh, wait. Okay, so we're here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I guess it's
for 5 weeks.
Jeezums. That's gonna be a lot.
That's 5 chapters. That's gonna be a lot. Okay,
should we just keep to 4?
I mean, we can. Do you want to just keep it to
like 4 let's just keep it to 4, because this has already been 3 hours, so it takes us about 3 hours to go through 4 chapters.
Okay.
So yeah, let's just keep
that sounds good to me.
Keep it to 4.
Yeah, totally fair.
But oh my gosh, I loved these chapters. I can't wait to get into it more. And I
really love these chapters.
I have bookmarked all the spots where Calcifer has given clues. I'm up to 5 of them.
I'm so glad you did, because I'm definitely gonna want to go back as, like, even
Oh,
if
yeah.
it's like at the end of the book, whenever we finish it, I'm gonna want to go back and know what all of the hints were. So.
Oh, yeah. I'll be able to, like, every time one was mentioned, I'm like, oop, there's another one. Oop, there's another one. And I'm like, oh, now that I know, I'm going to be so, like, happy when we both know what's going on and be like, here you go.
Yes. I can't wait.
Oh my gosh, but that was so much fun. Okay, so we're looking at April 5th?
Wait, for 4 weeks?
No.
Would be the 29th, right?
But we're doing it, I think we should do 4 chapters every month.
Oh, okay, so you want to do April 5th, but we just read 4 chapters.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, okay, that works for me.
Cool. So then that will be the end of this. I am going to deafen and mute.
Alright, sounds good. I will too.
Alright. Okay, and with that, thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be back tomorrow with an episode of my Discord Member's Choice, but until then, I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is to you, and I hope to see you guys then. Bye!